The woods near Bellwood glow green under summer stars. A boy storms away from a campfire argument, annoyed and bored, when something crashes through the trees ahead of him. Inside a smoking pod sits a watch unlike anything on Earth. In the second it locks onto Ben Tennyson's wrist, his entire life changes forever. This is the complete Ben 10 classic timeline, covering every alien transformation, every enemy that hunted him, and every choice that turned a 10-year-old kid into something the galaxy couldn't ignore. We'll move through the original summer road trip, the battles that revealed hidden pasts, and the futures that showed what kind of hero Ben might become. Whether you watched this show when it first aired or found it later through reruns and streaming, this documentary walks you step by step through the canon story, no theories, no speculation, just the events as they happened. So how did a summer vacation turn into a war across the universe? Ben Tennyson is 10 years old, stuck on a summer road trip with his grandpa Max and his cousin Gwen, and he's already sick of it. They're camping in the woods somewhere outside Bellwood, and after another argument with Gwen about who gets to pick the radio station, Ben storms off into the trees to cool down. He doesn't plan to go far, just far enough to not hear her voice for a few minutes. That's when the sky tears open above him. A bright green streak cuts through the darkness, crashing into the forest with enough force to shake the ground under his feet. Ben freezes, staring at the smoking crater ahead, then does exactly what any curious kid would do. He walks straight toward it. Inside the crater, half buried in dirt and broken branches, sits a metal pod the size of a suitcase. It's warm to the touch, covered in symbols he doesn't recognize, and when he pulls it open, there's a watch inside. Except it's not really a watch. It's sleek, black, and green, with a glowing hourglass symbol on the face, and the second Ben's fingers brush against it, the device springs to life. It leaps off the pod and clamps onto his wrist with a metallic snap, tightening so fast he doesn't have time to pull away. Ben panics, yanking at it, twisting his arm, trying to pry it off, but the watch doesn't budge. It sinks into his skin like it was always meant to be there. He slaps at the faceplate in frustration, and the hourglass symbol pops up, projecting a holographic silhouette into the air. Ben stares at it, some kind of alien figure, broad and flickering with heat. Without really thinking, he slams his palm down on the watch, and then everything changes. His body ignites. Flames pour out of his skin, his height doubles, his hands become molten rock, and suddenly he's not Ben Tennyson anymore. He's something else, something burning. He tries to scream, but the sound that comes out is deeper, rougher, like a roar from a furnace. The trees around him catch fire instantly, branches blacken, and curl. The grass under his feet turns to ash. Ben stumbles backward, flailing, trying to figure out how to stop being on fire, and in his panic, he accidentally sets half the forest ablaze. Smoke fills the air. Animals scatter. The flames spread faster than he can process, and for a moment, all he can think is that he's going to burn the whole campground down, and somehow it's going to be Gwen's fault for making him walk out here in the first place. But then instinct kicks in. He doesn't know how, but his new body understands fire in a way his human brain doesn't. He can feel the heat bending around him, responding to him, and when he focuses, he can push it back. He starts grabbing at the flames, pulling them into himself, absorbing them like fuel. One tree, then another, then the underbrush. It takes longer than it should. He's clumsy, still figuring out how arms made of magma actually work. But eventually the fire dies down, leaving only smoke and scorched earth behind. When the watch finally times out, Ben drops back into his own body, gasping and covered in soot. He stares at his hands, then at the watch, then at the destruction around him, and one thought cuts through all the confusion. This thing can turn him into aliens. He doesn't get much time to process that before the drones arrive. They come in fast and silent, sleek metal spheres hovering through the trees with red scanner lights sweeping the ground. Ben ducks behind a rock, heart hammering, watching as the drones circle the crater where the pod landed. One of them projects a hologram. A massive alien face, pale and skeletal, with tentacles hanging from where a mouth should be. The voice that comes out is cold and commanding. The Omnitrix has been located. Retrieve it. Destroy anything that interferes. Ben doesn't wait to hear more. He bolts back toward camp, crashing through the woods, yelling for Max and Gwen. By the time he reaches the rust bucket, the drones are already closing in, firing energy blasts that tear through trees and explode against the RV's metal siding. Max doesn't ask questions. He just shoves both kids inside, grabs something that looks suspiciously like a high-tech weapon from under the driver's seat, and starts shooting back. Gwen is screaming at Ben, demanding to know what he did. and Ben is trying to explain between gasps that he found a watch, and it turned him into a walking fireball, and now some alien warlord wants it back. Max listens while firing controlled bursts at the drones, his face grim and focused in a way that doesn't match the goofy Grandpa Ben thought he knew. One drone gets close enough to latch onto the rust bucket's roof. Max swerves hard, sending Gwen and Ben sprawling, then slams the brakes and floors it in reverse, scraping the drone off against a low-hanging tree branch. It explodes in a spray of sparks and metal fragments. The other drones hesitate, recalculating, and Max uses that moment to punch the gas and tear out of the campground, leaving. Smoking tire marks and a crater full of broken alien tech behind. They don't stop driving until they're miles away, pulled over on some empty stretch of highway under a sky that's just starting to lighten with dawn. Ben sits on the RV steps, staring at the watch on his wrist, and Max sits down next to him without a word. "What is this thing?" Ben finally asks. Max looks at the Omnitrix for a long moment, and when he answers, his voice is careful. "It's called the Omnitrix, and if I'm right, it's the most powerful device in the galaxy." Ben waits for more, but Max just shakes his head and stands up, muttering something about checking the engine. Gwen crosses her arms and glares at Ben like this is somehow still his fault, which it kind of is, but Ben barely notices. He's too busy staring at the watch, at the way the hourglass symbol pulses faintly in the early light, and thinking about what it felt like to be something other than human. By the time the sun comes up, Ben has already made his decision. He doesn't say it out loud, not yet, but the thought is there, clear and certain. If this thing can turn him into a superhero, then that's exactly what he's going to be. And somewhere far away, floating in the cold vacuum of space, Vilgax watches through the broken feed from his destroyed drones, and begins plotting his next move. The Omnitrix is on Earth. The boy wearing it doesn't even know what he has, and Vilgax has all the time in the universe to take it back. The road trip continues, but it's different now. Ben keeps catching Max watching him out of the corner of his eye, like he's waiting for something to go wrong. Gwen has started carrying a laptop everywhere, researching alien sightings and weird news stories, and Ben can't stop messing with the Omnitrix every chance he gets. He's supposed to be learning control, figuring out which alien does what, but mostly he's just excited to be the one with superpowers for once. Their first real stop after the campground is Washington, D.C., where Max insists they visit the monuments and museums like a normal family vacation. Ben is bored within the first hour, and Gwen won't stop lecturing him about history facts he doesn't care about. But that night, while they're parked near the National Mall, something goes wrong at the Natural History Museum. Animals are escaping. Not normal escapes. These animals have been changed. A frog the size of a car smashes through the museum's front doors. A swarm of mutated parrots tears through the gift shop, screeching and throwing chunks of stone with their beaks. Tourists scatter. Security guards fire useless shots into the air, and Ben sees his chance. He ducks behind a statue, slaps the Omnitrix, and goes Wildmutt, a blind, orange-furred beast with no eyes and a sense of smell sharp enough to track a heartbeat from a block away. He crashes into the frog mid-leap, tackles it into a fountain, and chases down the parrots one by one until they're cornered in an alley. It's messy and loud, and by the time the Omnitrix times out, Ben is soaking wet and covered in feathers, but the animals are contained. Max shows up a few minutes later with a device that looks like a sci-fi cattle prod, herding the creatures into a van that definitely doesn't belong to the park service. He doesn't explain where he got the van or the device. He just tells Ben and Gwen to get back to the rust bucket and wait. But Ben follows him instead. He stays quiet, ducking behind parked cars and dumpsters, and watches as Max enters a warehouse on the edge of the city. Inside, a man in a stained lab coat is ranting about evolution and progress, surrounded by cages full of more mutated animals. The man calls himself Dr. Animo, and he's angry. Angry at the scientific community for rejecting his work. Angry at the world for not recognizing his genius. Max tries to talk him down, but Animo just laughs and activates a machine that bathes the warehouse in purple light. The animals grow larger, more aggressive, and Animo points at Max with a manic grin. "You should have stayed out of this, Tennyson." Ben doesn't wait to hear the rest. He slams the Omnitrix and goes Stinkfly, a massive insect alien with 4 eyes, wings that hum like helicopter blades, and goo that smells bad enough to make grown men pass out. He dive bombs Animo, splatters his machine with corrosive slime, and keeps the mutated animals busy while Max shuts down the purple light generator. Anemo tries to run, but Max tackles him, zip-ties his hands, and calls someone on a phone Ben has never seen before. Later, when they're back on the road, Ben asks Max how he knew where to find Anemo. Max gives him a vague answer about old contacts and keeping an eye on certain types of tech. It's not a real answer, and Ben knows it, but he's too tired to push. The next few stops follow a similar pattern. At a lakeside campground, something is dumping chemicals into the water, and the local lake monster turns out to be a mutated fish protecting its poisoned home. Ben goes gray matter, a tiny, hyper-intelligent alien with green skin and a brain that processes information faster than any computer, and finds the real source: barrels of toxic waste hidden in an underwater cave. He rigs a controlled explosion using cleaning supplies from the campground's supply shed, neutralizes the waste, and the fish calms down immediately. At a quiet retirement community in the desert, Max gets tense the moment they pull into the parking lot. The residents are too friendly, too coordinated, and when Ben wanders off to explore, he finds a hidden bunker filled with alien weapons and surveillance equipment. Gwen gets captured trying to snoop, and Ben has to fight his way through a small army of senior citizens who move like trained soldiers. It turns out the whole town is a front for a group of former operatives, people who worked with Max decades ago and never really retired. They're not villains exactly, but they're not heroes either, and Max makes it clear they're not welcome to follow the rust bucket when it leaves. Each fight teaches Ben something new about the Omnitrix. He learns that timing out in the middle of a battle is a death sentence. He learns that some aliens are better for specific jobs. Diamond Head's crystal constructs can block energy blasts, XLR-8 speed lets him disarm bombs before they go off, an upgrade can merge with any machine and take control of it from the inside. But he also learns that Max knows way too much about alien technology for someone who's supposed to be a regular plumber. One night, while Gwen is asleep and Max is driving, Ben asks him directly, "You were more than a plumber, weren't you?" Max doesn't answer right away. He just stares at the road, hands tight on the wheel, and finally says, "I'll tell you when you're ready." Ben wants to argue, but something in Max's voice stops him. So he just nods, leans back against the window, and watches the desert roll by in the dark. The Omnitrix pulses softly on his wrist, and somewhere in the back of his mind, Ben wonders how many more secrets Max is carrying. The desert is quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. Max pulls the rust bucket off the highway and into an abandoned ghost town, saying something about needing to check the oil and stretch their legs. Ben doesn't believe him. Max has been tense all morning, checking the mirrors too often, like he's expecting someone to follow them. He's right to be worried. The attack comes at noon, when the sun is high enough to bleach the sand white. 3 figures drop from the sky, landing hard enough to crack the pavement. They're aliens mercenaries, from the look of them, and they're not here to talk. One of them is a hulking creature covered in orange rock-like skin, another moves so fast it's just a blur of purple light, and the third is sleek and crystalline, with blades growing out of his arms and a cold, calculating stare. The crystalline one speaks first. His name is Tetrax, and he's here for the Omnitrix. He doesn't waste time with threats or speeches, he just charges. Ben barely has time to react before Tetrax is on him, blades flashing, forcing him to roll behind a broken-down car and slam the Omnitrix. He goes Diamond Head, matching crystal against crystal, and for the first time, Ben is fighting someone who knows exactly how his alien form works. Tetrax is faster, sharper, more experienced. He blocks every attack Ben throws at him, counters with precision strikes that chip away at Ben's defenses and doesn't give him room to breathe. The other 2 mercenaries keep Max and Gwen pinned down, firing energy blasts and throwing debris, and for a few minutes, it looks like this is the fight where Ben finally loses. But then Tetrax hesitates. He sees the way Ben fights. Reckless, desperate, but also protective, throwing himself between Gwen and a blast meant for her, and something shifts in his expression. He steps back, lowers his blades, and tells the other 2 to stand down. They argue. The contract was clear. Retrieve the Omnitrix. Eliminate anyone who resists. But Tetrax shakes his head. The boy doesn't even know what he's wearing. Vilgax lied to us. The other 2 mercenaries aren't happy, but they respect Tetrax enough to listen. They leave without another word, vanishing into the sky as quickly as they arrived. Tetrax stays behind for a moment, looking at Ben with something close to pity. "You're using the Omnitrix like a toy," he says. "If you keep fighting like that, you'll die." Before Ben can respond, Tetrax tosses him something a sleek hoverboard that folds up small enough to fit in a backpack. Learn to think before you transform, and stay away from Vilgax. Then he's gone, leaving Ben standing in the middle of the ghost town with a hoverboard in his hands and 100 questions he doesn't get to ask. Max doesn't say much as they pile back into the rust bucket, but Ben can tell he's shaken. Gwen is the one who finally breaks the silence, asking the question they're all thinking: who's Vilgax and why does he want the watch so badly? Max takes a long breath, then starts talking. He tells them about Vilgax, a warlord who conquered entire star systems, a being so powerful that even saying his name makes veteran soldiers nervous. The Omnitrix wasn't supposed to end up on Earth. It was supposed to go to someone who could protect it, someone trained and ready. But the delivery went wrong, the pod crashed, and now a 10-year-old kid is wearing the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. Ben listens, and for the first time since he found the watch, the weight of it actually sinks in. This isn't just a cool gadget. This is something people kill for, and Vilgax isn't going to stop sending hunters until he gets it back. Their next stop is a roadside tourist trap called Sparksville, a town that's basically one long main street full of neon signs and gimmick shops. Ben is still rattled from the ghost town fight, and when Gwen dares him to mess with a coin-operated fortune teller machine, he does it just to prove he's not scared. The machine sparks. Electricity arcs across the room, and suddenly the whole building is crawling with tiny, giggling creatures made of pure energy. They're called megawatts, and they feed on electricity, multiplying every time they touch a power line. Within minutes, they've spread across the entire town, shorting out streetlights, exploding transformers, and turning Sparksville into a blackout zone. Ben tries to fight them as 4 arms, but punching living lightning doesn't do much. He switches to XLR8, trying to outrun them, but they just split into smaller copies and keep spreading. It's Gwen who figures out the solution. The megawatts are drawn to the fortune teller machine because that's where they were released. If they can lure them all back and shut down the machine, the creatures should disperse. It takes all 3 of them working together. Gwen rewiring the machine, Max distracting the megawatts with a chain of car batteries, and Ben using Upgrade to merge with the machine and turn it into a giant energy magnet. The plan works. The megawatts get sucked back inside, the machine overloads, and the whole thing explodes in a shower of sparks and fried circuits. Sparksville gets its power back. The town mayor thanks them, then quietly asks them to leave before anyone starts asking questions about the giant orange alien that was punching lightning monsters in the middle of Main Street. As they drive away, Ben stares at the Omnitrix and realizes something he should have figured out earlier. Every time he uses this thing, he's putting a target on his back. And not just bounty hunters, weird alien creatures, old enemies of Max's, and now accidents caused by his own mistakes. The watch doesn't just give him power, it makes him responsible for everything that power touches. That night, parked under a sky full of stars, Ben asks Max if he ever regrets giving up his old life. Max just smiles and says, "Not for a second." But Ben catches the way his grandfather's hand tightens on the RV keys, like he's already planning their next escape route, and he knows that's not the whole truth. The rust bucket rolls into New York City on a Saturday afternoon, and for once, Ben is actually excited. Max has errands to run, Gwen wants to visit some museum she's been reading about, and Ben just wants to get away from both of them for a few hours. He slips off while they're arguing about parking and heads straight for the nearest arcade. That's where he meets Kevin. Kevin Levin is maybe a year or 2 older than Ben, with black hair, a cocky grin, and an energy that makes it clear he doesn't follow anyone's rules. He's good at the arcade games, too good, and when Ben accuses him of cheating, Kevin just laughs and offers to show him how it's done. They play a few rounds together, trade insults, and somewhere in the middle of it, Ben realizes this is the first kid his age he's actually hung out with since the summer started. Kevin notices the Omnitrix almost immediately. He doesn't freak out or ask a million questions, he just nods like it makes sense and says, "Yeah, I've got powers too." He proves it by touching a busted pinball machine and absorbing its energy, lighting up his whole body with crackling electricity. Ben's eyes go wide, Kevin grins, and just like that, they're not just 2 kids hanging out in an arcade anymore, they're 2 kids with powers, and that changes everything. They spend the afternoon causing chaos. Small stuff at first, Kevin siphoning energy from streetlights to mess with traffic signals, Ben going XLR8 to prank taxi drivers by running circles around their cars. But Kevin keeps pushing for bigger stunts, and Ben, desperate to impress someone who actually thinks the Omnitrix is cool instead of dangerous, goes along with it. It escalates when Kevin suggests they hit a bank. Not to steal, Kevin insists, just to scare the guards, prove they can. Ben hesitates, but Kevin frames it as a test. If Ben's really a hero, he should be able to walk into a bank and walk out without hurting anyone, right? Ben agrees, and it works, sort of. He goes 4 arms, Kevin absorbs the vault's security system, and they stroll out with a bag of cash that Kevin swears they'll return later. But Ben can see the look in Kevin's eyes when he holds that money, and it's not the look of someone planning to give it back. The breaking point comes that night. Kevin wants to absorb energy directly from the Omnitrix just to see what happens. Ben refuses at first, but Kevin keeps pushing, calling him a coward, saying he thought they were friends. Finally, Ben gives in. He lets Kevin touch the Omnitrix while it's activated, and the energy transfer happens fast. Too fast. Kevin's body warps. He starts shifting between different alien forms, his skin flickering from Heat Blast's flames, to Diamond Head's crystal, to Wild Mutt's fur, all at once. He screams, not in pain, but in excitement, and when the transformation stabilizes, he's something new, a twisted fusion of all 10 aliens Ben has unlocked, grotesque and powerful and completely out of control. He calls himself Kevin 11, and the first thing he does is go on a rampage. He tears through the subway system, derailing trains and laughing as people scatter. He smashes into a power plant, absorbing so much energy that half the city's grid goes dark. And when Ben tries to stop him, switching between Upgrade, XLR8, and Diamond Head to keep up, Kevin just absorbs every attack and throws it back twice as hard. Max and Gwen show up with a stolen police scanner and a plan. Lure Kevin to the docks, where the water will short out his electrical absorption. It's risky, and Kevin almost drowns both of them before Ben manages to knock him into the river with a diamond shard the size of a streetlight. Kevin sinks, sparking and screaming, and the last thing Ben sees before he disappears under the water is the look of betrayal on his face. The city recovers. The news blames the blackout on a freak electrical storm, and Ben sits in the back of the rust bucket, staring at his hands, realizing that he just lost the first real friend he'd made all summer. And it's because he was stupid enough to share his power with someone who only wanted to use it. Max doesn't lecture him. Gwen doesn't gloat. They just sit with him in the quiet as the rust bucket pulls out of the city, and Ben learns a lesson that's going to stick with him for a long time. Not everyone who understands what it's like to have power deserves to have it. And somewhere in the dark water of the Hudson River, Kevin Levin drags himself onto a trash barge, still alive, still mutated, and already planning his revenge. Vilgax isn't done. Even from his ship in the depths of space, recovering from injuries that would kill most beings, he's still moving pieces across the board. His drones failed. His bounty hunters failed. So now he's trying something new, empowering humans to do the work for him. The first one is Rojo, a biker who stumbles across one of Vilgax's crashed drones in the desert. The drone fuses with her motorcycle, turning it into a high-tech war machine covered in red armor and loaded with alien weaponry. She doesn't care about Vilgax or the Omnitrix. She just wants to be the most dangerous thing on the road. But Vilgax whispers instructions through the drone's comm system, and Rojo follows them, hunting the rust bucket across state lines. Ben fights her on an empty highway at sunset, going Upgrade to merge with her bike and shut it down from the inside. It works, barely, and Rojo crashes hard enough to knock herself out. Max disables the drone before it can repair itself, and they leave her unconscious on the side of the road with a warning not to mess with alien tech she doesn't understand. The next threat is quieter, and somehow worse. Zombozo is a traveling circus clown who drains happiness from his audience, literally feeding on their laughter until they're empty husks. His circus rolls into a small town, and within days, people are walking around blank-faced and hollow, unable to feel joy. Gwen is the first to notice something's wrong, and when she investigates, Zombozo's crew, a strongman, an acid-spitting woman, and a hypnotist, capture her and drag her back to the big top. Ben has to face his childhood fear of clowns head-on. He goes Ghost Freak for the first time in a real fight, phasing through Zombozo's traps and scaring the circus freaks badly enough that they scatter. But Zombozo himself is harder to stop. He drains Ben's confidence mid-fight, making him second-guess every transformation, every move. It's only when Ben sees Gwen still struggling, still refusing to give up, that he pushes through the fear and knocks Zombozo out with a single punch from 4 arms. The circus collapses. The drained townspeople slowly start to recover. And Ben learns that some enemies don't need alien tech to be dangerous. Some of them just need to know which fears to exploit. The last agent Vilgax sends is Hex, a sorcerer in a skull mask who believes magic is the true power in the universe. He's hunting down 5 ancient charms called the Charms of Basil, artifacts that grant their user total control over the elements. He's already collected 4 by the time the Tennysons cross his path, and he's planning to use the 5th, the Charm of Luck, to level an entire city and prove that magic is superior to science. Gwen ends up with the Charm of Luck by accident, and it turns her into Lucky Girl, a masked hero with reality warping probability on her side. For a brief, wonderful moment, she's the one with powers, and Ben hates it. He hates that she's better at this than he is, hates that people cheer for her instead of him, hates that Max keeps telling him to let her have her moment. But when Hex corners them both, it's Ben who has to step up. He goes Cannonbolt for the first time, a massive armadillo-like alien that can roll at devastating speeds, and smashes through Hex's spells like they're made of paper. Gwen loses the Charm of Luck in the fight, and Hex escapes with all 5 charms, but they've stopped his ritual and saved the city. Later, when they're patching up cuts and bruises in the rust bucket, Gwen admits she liked being a hero. Ben, still sulking, mutters that she can have the spotlight anytime she wants. She punches his arm and says she'd rather be his backup. It's the first real truce they've had all summer. Through all of this, Vilgax is watching. Every fight, every victory, every transformation gets logged and analyzed. He's learning Ben's patterns, his favorite aliens, his weaknesses. And while the Tennysons think they're just dealing with random villains and bad luck, Vilgax is building a profile, preparing for the day when he's strong enough to come to Earth himself and take the Omnitrix by force. That day is coming sooner than any of them realize. The Forever Knights show up without warning, and they show up armed. Ben is exploring a medieval-themed festival when he stumbles into a restricted area and finds armed guards in full-plate armor standing watch over a vault full of stolen alien technology. The leader, a man named Enoch, wears a mask that hides everything but his eyes, and when he sees Ben, he doesn't hesitate. He orders his men to capture him. Ben fights his way out as heat blast, setting tapestries on fire and melting through locked doors, but the Knights have weapons specifically designed to counter alien powers. Energy nets, cryo grenades, sonic disruptors, they've been hunting aliens for centuries, and they know how to fight them. Ben barely escapes, and when he tells Max what he found, Max's face goes pale. The Forever Knights aren't just random extremists. They're an ancient order that's been hoarding alien tech since the Middle Ages, and they see anyone connected to extraterrestrial life as a threat to humanity. Max has dealt with them before, and it never ended well. Around the same time, the Omnitrix starts malfunctioning. During a fight with a giant tick-like alien that crashes to Earth inside a meteor, the watch glitches and shrinks Ben down to the size of an action figure. He's stuck as gray matter, and he stays that way for hours trying to fix the watch from the inside while Gwen and Max deal with the alien tick, which is planning to lay eggs that will devour the planet's core. Ben eventually jury-rigs a solution using parts from the meteor's damaged ship, but the experience leaves him paranoid. The Omnitrix is powerful, but it's also fragile, and if it breaks at the wrong moment, he's dead. The malfunctions get worse. Ben catches a cold, and the Omnitrix interprets his symptoms as a signal to randomize transformations. He tries to go 4 arms and ends up as Ripjaws, gasping for water in the middle of a desert. He tries to go Heat Blast and turns into Wildmutt instead, useless in a fight that requires precision. It's humiliating, frustrating, and it reminds him that he's not in control of this thing as much as he thought. And then the dreams start. Vilgax appears in Ben's sleep, speaking directly to him through some kind of psychic link. He doesn't threaten or beg, he just talks, calm and cold, explaining that the Omnitrix belongs to him, that Ben is unworthy of it, and that no matter how many battles Ben wins, Vilgax will always be coming. Ben wakes up sweating, and the next night, it happens again. And again. Max tries everything: sleeping pills, white noise machines, even a jury-rigged psychic blocker made from spare plumber tech, but nothing works. Vilgax is inside Ben's head now, and there's no way to stop him from getting closer. The invasion happens on a quiet Tuesday morning. Vilgax's ship drops out of orbit and hovers over a small town in the Midwest, and within minutes, drones are swarming the streets, scanning every human they find. Vilgax has healed. He's stronger than ever, and this time he's not sending proxies, he's coming himself. Ben is abducted mid-fight, teleported directly onto Vilgax's ship. He wakes up in a sterile white room, strapped to a table with Vilgax standing over him. This is the first time Ben has seen him in person, and the reality is worse than the nightmares. Vilgax is massive, covered in scars and cybernetic implants, and when he speaks, his voice vibrates through the floor. "Give me the Omnitrix, and I will let your planet live." Ben refuses. Vilgax doesn't seem surprised. He just activates a machine designed to cut the Omnitrix off Ben's arm. Consequences be damned. And Ben realizes he's going to die here, in space, alone. That's when Max arrives. It turns out Max didn't just stumble into plumber work. He was one of their best agents, and he still has access to their old bases. He launches a rescue mission from a hidden plumber outpost inside Mount Rushmore, using a stolen ship and weapons he swore he'd never touch again. Gwen is with him, terrified but stubborn, refusing to let her grandfather do this alone. They fight their way onto Vilgax's ship, and the battle is brutal. Max holds off drones and automated defenses while Gwen uses her laptop to hack the ship's security systems, and Ben, still strapped to the table, manages to break free just long enough to go XLR8 and short-circuit the Omnitrix extraction machine. Vilgax corners them in the ship's reactor room. Max, out of options, rigs the reactor to overload, and they have maybe 2 minutes to get off the ship before it tears itself apart. Ben grabs Gwen, Max grabs a teleporter remote, and they barely make it back to Earth before the explosion lights up the sky like a second sun. Vilgax's ship is gone. The drones stop moving. The invasion ends as suddenly as it began. But as the Tennysons stand in the wreckage of the Mount Rushmore base, watching the debris burn up in the atmosphere, Ben knows this isn't over. Vilgax survived worse, and if he's still out there, he'll be back. After Vilgax's attack, Max finally stops pretending. He takes Ben and Gwen to what's left of the Mount Rushmore base and shows them everything: the archives, the weapons, the alien containment cells. He tells them about the Plumbers, an intergalactic law enforcement group that used to patrol the galaxy, keeping Earth safe from threats most humans didn't even know existed. Max was a plumber for decades. He fought wars, made alliances, and eventually retired to live a quiet life. But quiet doesn't last when you're carrying around the most powerful weapon in the universe. One of Max's old partners, a man named Phil, shows up a few days later. He's friendly, nostalgic, and claims he just wants to catch up. But Ben notices the way Phil keeps glancing at the Omnitrix, and when they visit Phil's rundown hotel, they find the basement full of alien tech and null void projector components. The null void is a prison dimension, a place where the Plumbers used to send the worst criminals in the galaxy. Phil has been using a stolen projector to release those criminals, one at a time, and sell them to the highest bidder. Some he uses for manual labor, some he rents out as bodyguards. And when Ben confronts him, Phil just shrugs and says the Plumbers are gone, so why shouldn't he make a profit off what they left behind? Ben fights one of the released prisoners, a hulking insectoid creature that tears through the hotel like tissue paper, and barely wins. Max confronts Phil directly, and there's real pain in his voice when he asks how Phil could betray everything they stood for. Phil doesn't have a good answer. He just says times change, and people have to survive. Max takes the null void projector, and they leave Phil behind with a warning. If he ever sells another alien, Max will come back and finish this. Phil doesn't argue. He just watches them go, and Ben can't tell if he feels guilty or just annoyed at getting caught. Later, at a motel that's been overrun by alien silkworms, Ben and Gwen have to use the null void projector to trap the creatures before they cocoon the entire building. It's their first time handling the device, and it's heavier than it looks, not just physically, but morally. Every time they open a portal to the null void, Ben can see shadows moving on the other side, prisoners banging on the dimensional barrier, desperate to escape. Max explains that the null void isn't just a prison. It's a place where time doesn't work right, where the strongest predators hunt anything weaker, and where escape is almost impossible. The Plumbers only used it for criminals too dangerous to hold anywhere else. And now that projector is in the back of the rust bucket, just another piece of alien tech they're carrying around. Ben asks Max if they're going to end up like Phil, holding on to old weapons, old grudges, unable to let go. Max doesn't answer right away. He just puts a hand on Ben's shoulder and says, "As long as we're trying to help." People, we're nothing like him. That night, parked under a sky full of stars, Ben stares at the null void projector and wonders how many other dangerous things are buried in the galaxy, waiting for someone like him to stumble across them. The meteor comes down just outside a small desert town, and the Tennysons are there within hours. Inside the crater, they find a massive creature, part tick, part organic ship, covered in armor so thick that nothing Ben throws at it even leaves a scratch. The creature doesn't attack immediately. It just starts digging, burrowing deep into the earth, and Max realizes what it's planning. It's going to lay eggs in the planet's core, and when they hatch, the larvae will devour Earth from the inside out. Ben tries everything. Heat Blast's fire just bounces off the armor. Diamond Head's shards shatter on impact. Four Arms can't get a grip on the creature's slick shell. And when it finally turns to fight, one swipe of its claws sends Ben flying hard enough to crack the Omnitrix's faceplate. That's when the Watch does something new. The faceplate pops open, a green light floods out, and a hologram of an alien Ben has never seen before appears. a massive armored ball covered in yellow plating. Ben doesn't have time to think. He just slams his hand down, and the transformation happens instantly. He's Cannonbolt now, heavy, rolling, unstoppable. He curls into a ball and slams into the creature at full speed, punching straight through its armor like a wrecking ball through paper. The impact stuns the creature long enough for Max to rig an explosive charge, and when it detonates, the creature is blown back into space, its eggs destroyed before they can hatch. Ben sits in the dirt, still getting used to Cannonbolt's bulk, and realizes the Omnitrix just unlocked a new alien on its own. Not because he asked for it, because it knew he needed it. That's both comforting and terrifying in equal measure. Not long after, Kevin comes back. He's still mutated, still carrying pieces of all the 10 of Ben's aliens in his body, but he's learned to control the shifting better. He's also angrier, more focused, and he's got a plan. Frame Ben's aliens for crimes across the city, turn the public against him, and force him into hiding. It works. Kevin, disguised as Heat Blast, robs a jewelry store. As Four Arms, he trashes a shopping mall. As Diamond Head, he derails a subway train, and every time, security footage catches the alien in action and the news runs wild with it. Within days, Ben's hero status is gone, replaced by wanted posters and conspiracy theories. The government responds by sending in Lieutenant Steele, a no-nonsense military officer who sees all aliens, including Ben's, as threats to national security. Steele doesn't care that Ben is a kid. He doesn't care that Ben has saved lives. All he cares about is that there's an unregistered alien weapon running loose, and he's going to shut it down. The final confrontation happens on a rooftop in the middle of the city. Kevin is there, gloating. Steele is there, with a full tactical team and weapons designed to disable the Omnitrix. And Ben is caught in the middle, trying to prove he's not the villain and while also stopping Kevin from tearing the city apart. The fight is messy. Ben cycles through transformations, trying to stay one step ahead of both Kevin and Steele's soldiers. Gwen hacks into the city's traffic cameras to prove Kevin is the one committing the crimes, broadcasting the footage live to every screen in the area. And Max, using his old plumber credentials, manages to convince Steele to hold his fire just long enough for Ben to take Kevin down. Kevin gets caught in a null void portal, screaming as he's dragged into the prison dimension. Steele watches Ben revert to human form, studies him for a long moment, then tells his team to stand down. He doesn't apologize, he just says, "You've got one chance to prove you're on our side. Don't waste it." The city slowly starts to trust Ben again, but the damage is done. People know about the aliens now. The government knows. And Ben realizes that being a hero isn't just about winning fights. It's about living with the fact that the world is always watching, always judging, and always one bad day away from turning on him. As the rust bucket rolls out of the city, Ben looks back at the skyline and sees his reflection in the window. A 10-year-old kid with a weapon strapped to his wrist, carrying the weight of a galaxy he barely understands. Max tells him to get some sleep. Gwen is already dozing off in the back. And Ben, for the first time in weeks, actually listens, because tomorrow, the road continues, and there are still so many more fights ahead. The morning starts wrong. Ben wakes up in the rust bucket, but something feels off. The light coming through the windows is too bright, the air smells different, and when he sits up, Gwen is staring at him, with an expression he's never seen before, pity mixed with something close to guilt. "What?" Ben asks, and that's when he notices his wrist is bare. The Omnitrix is gone. He scrambles out of bed, searching the RV, tearing through blankets and cushions, and Gwen just watches him with that same sad look until finally she holds up her arm. The Omnitrix is there, locked onto her wrist, glowing softly in the morning light. Ben's first instinct is anger. She stole it, she must have. But then Max comes in and explains what actually happened. This isn't their timeline, this is an alternate day, a glitch in reality caused by some kind of temporal anomaly they drove through last night. In this version of events, Gwen found the watch in the woods instead of Ben. She's been the hero all summer, and Ben has just been Ben. They spend the day trying to fix the anomaly, but while they're working on it, Ben gets to see what the summer would have looked like with Gwen in charge. She's more careful with the transformations, more strategic. She doesn't showboat or take unnecessary risks. When a Vilgax drone attacks a small town, she goes ripjaws and disables it underwater in under 3 minutes. No collateral damage, no fires, no destroyed property. Ben hates how good she is at it. He hates watching her do everything he's been doing, but better, smarter, cleaner. She doesn't waste transformations on pranks. She doesn't get into fights with Max about being reckless. She just does the job and moves on. But he also notices the cracks. Gwen is exhausted. She's been carrying the weight of the Omnitrix alone, with no one to share the pressure, and it's wearing her down. She second-guesses herself constantly, afraid of making the wrong call, and when Max gets hurt during a fight, a piece of falling debris that Ben would have caught without thinking, she freezes completely, unable to transform because she's too scared of making things worse. Ben talks her through it. He doesn't have powers in this timeline, but he knows what it's like to carry that watch, and he tells her the truth. You can't be perfect, you can't save everyone, and if you wait for the perfect moment to act, people die while you're thinking. Gwen takes a breath, transforms into XLR8, and saves Max before the building collapses. The anomaly corrects itself an hour later, snapping them back to their proper timeline, and when Ben wakes up with the Omnitrix on his own wrist again, he doesn't complain. He just looks at Gwen, who's pretending to be asleep across from him, and quietly says, "You would have been good at this." She doesn't respond, but Ben sees the smallest smile cross her face before she rolls over. The anomaly has barely faded when the next disaster hits, and this time it's personal. Ben is abducted mid-fight by a massive alien gladiator named Slix Vigma, who runs an underground fighting arena somewhere in the Andromeda system. The rules are simple. Fight until you win your freedom or die trying. Ben is thrown into a cell with dozens of other captives, all of them warriors or criminals pulled from across the galaxy, and the first face he recognizes makes his stomach drop. Kevin is here. Kevin looks worse than the last time Ben saw him. The mutation has spread further, his body constantly flickering between alien forms, and he's clearly been fighting in this arena for weeks. When he sees Ben, his first instinct is to attack, but the arena's shock collars stop him before he can land a hit. They stand there, separated by a few feet of air and months of bad blood, and neither one knows what to say. They don't get much time to figure it out. Slix Vigma pairs them together for a tag team match against a duo of hunters who've been undefeated for months. If they lose, they both die. If they refuse to fight, they both die. The only way out is to cooperate, and that's the worst possible situation for two people who hate each other as much as Ben and Kevin do. The fight is brutal. Ben cycles through Heat Blast, Four Arms, and Ren Wildmutt, while Kevin uses his stolen alien powers to cover Ben's weak points. They don't work together smoothly, they argue mid-battle, blame each other for mistakes, and nearly get killed twice because they're too busy yelling to watch each other's backs. But somehow, they win. Slix Vigma is impressed enough to offer them a deal. Keep fighting, keep winning, and he'll give them better cells, better food, maybe even their freedom someday. Kevin looks tempted. Ben sees it in his eyes. The part of Kevin that likes being powerful, being feared, being the center of attention. But before Kevin can accept, Ben makes a move. He goes upgrade, merges with the arena's control system, and shuts down every shock collar in the building at once. Chaos erupts. Prisoners scatter. Slix Vigma's guards try to contain the riot, and in the confusion, Ben and Kevin fight their way to the docking bay and steal a ship. They don't say goodbye. Kevin just takes one escape pod, Ben takes another, and they launch in opposite directions without looking back. Later, when Max asks if Ben is okay, Ben just shrugs and says Kevin made his choice a long time ago, but he doesn't say what he's really thinking, that Kevin could have been a hero if things had been different, and that scares him more than any fight. The escape from the arena leaves Ben exhausted, but there's no time to rest. The rust bucket breaks down in the middle of nowhere, really breaks down this time, not just Max pretending to check the oil, and while they're waiting for parts, they cross paths with the Galactic Enforcers. The Enforcers are an official superhero team consisting of Ultimos, a flying powerhouse with strength that rivals Four Arms, Synaptak, a telekinetic squid-like alien who can move objects with his mind, and Teeny, a massive creature who can shrink down to human size at will. They're idealistic, well-meaning, and famous across multiple star systems for their heroics. They're also completely useless in an actual fight. The Enforcers show up to help Ben stop a rampaging alien beast that's tearing through a small desert town, but they cause more damage than the beast itself. Ultimos knocks over buildings trying to tackle the creature. Synaptak accidentally throws a car through a storefront. Teeny steps on a parked truck while trying to grab the beast, and by the time the fight is over, Ben has spent more time protecting civilians from the Enforcers than from the actual monster. Ben ends up stopping the creature himself, as Cannonbolt, rolling through its legs and knocking it unconscious, and when the dust settles, he turns to the Enforcers and asks them what they were thinking. Ultimos apologizes, admitting that most of their missions are ceremonial, appearing at events, shaking hands with dignitaries, posing for photos. They haven't fought a real threat in years, and it shows. They're heroes in name only, coasting on their reputation while other people do the actual work. Ben tells them they need to actually care about the people they're saving, not just the glory that comes with it. He's blunt about it, maybe harsher than he needs to be, but Ultimos takes the criticism surprisingly well. He admits they've gotten soft, forgotten why they started doing this, and he promises they'll do better. Before they leave, Synaptak pulls Ben aside and tells him something that sticks with him for weeks afterward. Word is spreading across the galaxy about the kid with the Omnitrix. Some species see him as a threat, others see him as a symbol, but everyone is watching. Ben is no longer just a kid on a road trip, he's part of something bigger, whether he's ready for it or not. That night, staring up at the stars from the roof of the rust bucket, Ben wonders how many other heroes are out there, struggling with the same questions he is. He wonders if any of them have answers, and he wonders if he'll ever be as good at this as people seem to expect him to be. Max climbs up onto the roof and sits next to him without saying anything. They just sit there together, watching the stars, and after a while, Max says, "You're doing fine, Ben. Better than fine." Ben wants to believe him. He's just not sure he does. The next few days are quieter, but that doesn't mean they're easier. The Tennysons stop at a small town to resupply, and Ben notices something strange. The locals are too happy. Not in a normal way. They're smiling constantly, laughing at things that aren't funny, moving through the streets like they're in a trance. Gwen is the first to connect the dots. She finds posters advertising a traveling circus that rolled through town 3 days ago, and when she cross-references the timing with the summoning with the start of the strange behavior, it all clicks into place. Zombozo is back. The clown is running his circus in the next town over, draining happiness from his audiences and leaving them hollow. By the time Ben, Gwen, and Max track him down, he's already infected hundreds of people, and his circus freaks, Acid Breath, Thumbskull, and Frightwig, are helping him expand his operation. Ben has to face his childhood fear of clowns head-on. He's terrified of them, always has been, and Zombozo knows it. The clown uses that fear against him, draining Ben's confidence mid-fight and making him second-guess every transformation. Ben tries to go forearms and hesitates. He tries to go Heat Blast and freezes. And the whole time, Zombozo is laughing, feeding on Ben's terror like it's a gourmet meal. It's only when Gwen gets captured, dragged into the big top and chained to a prop for Zombozo's next show, that Ben pushes through the fear. He goes Ghost Freak for one of the first times in a real fight, phasing through Zombozo's traps and scaring the circus freaks badly enough that they scatter. Zombozo himself is harder to stop. He drains Ben's confidence again, making him doubt everything, but Ben sees Gwen still struggling, still refusing to give up, and that's enough. He switches to forearms, grabs Zombozo by the collar, and punches him hard enough to knock him out cold. The circus collapses. The drained townspeople slowly start to recover, their smiles fading into confusion as they remember what happened. And Ben learns that some enemies don't need alien tech to be dangerous. Some of them just need to know which fears to exploit. Later, sitting in the rust bucket as they drive away, Gwen asks Ben if he's okay. Ben lies and says he's fine. But that night, he dreams about clowns, and when he wakes up, the Omnitrix is glowing faintly on his wrist, like it's reacting to his fear. He doesn't sleep well for the rest of the week. The campground looks normal at first. Cabins scattered around a lake, kids playing volleyball, counselors leading hikes through the woods. Max booked them a spot here because he thought they needed a break from fighting, a chance to actually enjoy the summer like normal people. Ben is skeptical, but he goes along with it. That peace lasts exactly 1 day. The campers start acting strange. They move too slowly, their eyes glassy and unfocused, and when Ben tries to talk to one of them, the kid just smiles and wanders off mid-sentence. Gwen notices the mushrooms first. Strange fungal growth scattered around the cabins in spiral patterns, pulsing faintly with bioluminescent light. When she touches one, it releases a cloud of spores, and suddenly she's giggling uncontrollably, stumbling toward the lake like she's sleepwalking. Ben grabs her before she can walk into the water, and Max uses a makeshift gas mask, fashioned from a t-shirt and duct tape, to get her back to the rust bucket before she's fully infected. The mushrooms are alien fungi, likely brought to Earth on a meteor, and they're using mind control to spread across the camp. The more people they infect, the larger the network grows, and if it reaches the nearby town, it could take over the entire region within days. Ben tries everything. He burns them as heat blast, but the spores just spread faster in the heat, riding the smoke to new areas. He freezes them with an alien he recently unlocked, Arctoguana, a reptilian creature that breathes ice, but the fungi just go dormant and wake up when the temperature rises. He even tries eating them as Upchuck, but they taste so bad that he gags mid-transformation and has to spit them out. Max figures out the solution after analyzing a sample under a microscope he's been carrying in the rust bucket storage. The fungi are connected through a central organism buried under the lake, a massive mycelial network that's feeding the entire colony. If they destroy the core, the rest of the network dies with it. Ben goes Ripjaws, dives deep into the lake and finds the core, a pulsating mass of fungal tissue the size of a house, glowing faintly in the dark water. It's covered in tendrils that reach out across the lake bed, connecting to every mushroom on the surface, and it pulses in rhythm like a heartbeat. He tears into it with claws and teeth, ignoring the spores that cloud the water around him, ripping through layers of fungal matter until the whole structure starts to collapse. The tendrils retract. The mushrooms on the surface wither and die, and when Ben surfaces, gasping for air, the campers are already starting to wake up, confused but alive. Gwen doesn't remember anything from her infection, but she's shaken. She tells Ben later that the last thing she remembers is feeling happy, too happy, like all her worries had been erased. And then nothing. Ben doesn't tell her how close she came to walking into the lake and drowning. Some things are better left unsaid. Their next stop is an underwater resort in the Bermuda Triangle, a luxury hotel built inside a massive air bubble on the ocean floor. It's supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime vacation, the kind of place only the ultra-rich can afford, and Max booked them a room using old plumber credentials that still carry weight in certain circles. But when they arrive, the staff is terrified, and the guests are locked in their rooms. Something is attacking the resort from outside, massive impacts that shake the entire structure, followed by strange noises that echo through the walls. Ben investigates as Ripjaws, swimming through the surrounding ocean, and discovers the truth. A group of stranded aliens has been living in the deep ocean for decades, using stolen human tech to survive. They've been trying to contact Earth's surface for help, but every signal they send gets intercepted by the resort's automated defenses, which interpret the messages as threats and respond with force. The aliens aren't villains. They're refugees, crashed here during a plumber operation years ago and forgotten when the plumbers disbanded. They've been trying to repair their ship, trying to go home, but they don't have the resources, and every attempt to ask for help has been met with violence. Max recognizes one of the aliens, a former smuggler he arrested 30 years ago during a raid on an illegal weapons depot. There's tension, old grudges that never fully healed, but Max swallows his pride and negotiates a truce. He helps the aliens repair their distress beacon, using parts from the rust bucket and knowledge from his plumber days, and in exchange, they agree to stop attacking the resort. Ben spends most of the encounter as Ripjaws, acting as a translator between the surface and the deep-sea aliens. It's one of the few times he's used that form outside of combat, and it feels strange to be the calm voice in the room instead of the one throwing punches. He listens to the aliens' stories, learns about the worlds they came from, and realizes that not every alien on Earth is here to conquer or destroy. Some of them are just lost. By the time they leave, the resort has agreed to let the aliens use their communication systems, and the aliens have promised to protect the area from actual threats. It's not a perfect solution, but it's better than war. The road leads them next to Central America, where rumors of a legendary weapon have drawn the attention of multiple factions. The Sword of Ekchwaj is said to grant its wielder total victory. In battle, and an ancient temple hidden deep in the jungle is the only place the sword supposedly still exists. The Forever Knights want it, a group of alien mercenaries wants it, and the Tennysons end up caught in the middle when they stumble across the temple while investigating reports of strange energy readings in the area. The temple is a death trap, designed to kill anyone who isn't worthy of claiming the sword. Spinning blades emerge from the walls. Floors collapse into pits filled with spikes. Poison darts shoot from hidden panels. Ben has to cycle through multiple aliens just to survive the first hallway. XLR-8 to outrun falling stones. Diamond Head to block the darts. Gray Matter to solve the mechanical puzzles that guard each chamber. Gwen uses her laptop to map the temple's layout, cross-referencing ancient texts she found online with the symbols carved into the walls. She's getting better at this, combining technology with research, thinking 3 steps ahead, and Ben catches himself being impressed even though he'd never admit it out loud. They reach the inner sanctum and find the sword, but so do the Forever Knights. Enoch is leading the expedition personally, and he's brought enough firepower to level the temple if necessary. He believes the sword will help humanity fight back against the alien invasion, and he's willing to kill anyone who stands in his way. The battle is chaotic. Ben as Forearms fights through a dozen armored knights, while Gwen triggers the temple's traps against their enemies, using her knowledge of the layout to turn the ancient defenses into weapons. Max duels Enoch directly, and for a moment it's clear these two have fought before. Their movements are too precise, too practiced, like a dance they've been rehearsing for decades. Enoch is skilled, ruthless, and completely convinced he's doing the right thing. He tells Max that humanity needs to wake up, to realize that the aliens are a threat, and that people like Ben, people who trust alien technology, are the real danger. Max doesn't argue, he just fights, blocking Enoch's strikes and looking for an opening. But Ben can see the way Max's hands shake slightly after each impact, the way he's breathing harder than usual, and he realizes his grandfather isn't as young as he used to be. In the end, Ben makes a choice that surprises everyone. He destroys the sword. Not because it's the right strategic move, but because he realizes as long as it exists, people will keep killing each other to claim it. He goes cannonbolt, rolls through the chamber at full speed, and smashes the sword into 1,000 pieces before anyone can stop him. Enoch is furious, swearing revenge, calling Ben a traitor to humanity, but the knights retreat when the temple starts collapsing, triggered by the sword's destruction, and the Tennysons barely escape with their lives. Outside, standing in the jungle as the temple crumbles behind them, Gwen asks Ben if he regrets breaking the sword. Ben just shrugs and says some weapons are too dangerous to exist. Max gives him a long look, something close to pride in his eye, and doesn't say anything. But Ben knows he made the right call. It's around this time that Gwen's magical life gets significantly more complicated. Charmcaster, the niece of the sorcerer Hex, shows up with a vendetta and a plan. She blames Gwen for humiliating her uncle, for stealing the charms of Bezel, and for generally existing. Her magic is stronger than Hex's, because more creative, more vicious, and she's not afraid to use dirty tricks. Their first real fight happens in a shopping mall in the middle of a major city. Charmcaster uses a body swap spell, trapping Gwen's mind inside her own body and taking over Gwen's. She then proceeds to trash Gwen's reputation, insulting strangers, shoplifting, picking fights with security guards, and generally making Gwen look like a spoiled, entitled brat. Ben doesn't realize what's happened until Gwen tries to steal the Omnitrix while he's asleep in the rust bucket. He wakes up to find her hand on his wrist, pulling at the watch, and when he confronts her, she plays innocent, claiming she was just curious about how it worked. But Ben knows Gwen. He knows the way she talks, the way she moves, the little details that make her herself. And this person wearing Gwen's face doesn't move right, doesn't talk right, doesn't even hold her laptop the same way. Meanwhile, the real Gwen is stuck in Charmcaster's body, dealing with magical tattoos she doesn't understand, and a voice in her head that keeps trying to teach her dark spells. She has to convince Ben and Max that she's really Gwen, not Charmcaster, and it's harder than it should be because Charmcaster knows just enough about Gwen's life to fake her way through most questions. The proof comes when Gwen uses Charmcaster's magic to recreate a private moment from earlier that summer, something only the real Gwen would know. She conjures an image of Ben crying after the Ghost Freak incident, something he made her promise never to tell anyone about. It's mean, it's invasive, but it works. Ben believes her. Together, they lure Charmcaster into a trap and force her to reverse the spell. The magic unravels, Gwen snaps back into her own body, and Charmcaster escapes in the chaos, laughing as she goes. She leaves behind a warning: this is just the beginning. She'll be back, and next time, she won't stop at humiliation. Gwen starts researching magic more seriously after that. She scours the internet for old texts, studies the properties of the charms of Bezel, and practices small spells in the back of the rust bucket when she thinks no one is watching. Max catches her once, sees her levitating a pencil with a whispered incantation, and tells her to be careful. Magic has a cost, he says, and it's not always obvious what you're paying until it's too late. Gwen nods, but she doesn't stop practicing. She's tired of being the sidekick, tired of watching Ben get all the powers while she just sits in the background with a laptop. If magic is her way to fight back, then she's going to learn everything she can. These smaller adventures blur together as the summer wears on. Ben fights robot duplicates at a tech expo, stops a blob creature from consuming a desert town, and deals with a villain who can control plants and nearly buries him alive in vines. None of these enemies are as dangerous as Vilgax or the Forever Knights, so the fights are faster, the resolutions quicker, but each one teaches Ben something new about the Omnitrix and about himself. He's getting better at this, more confident, more strategic. He's learning to think before he transforms, to pick the right alien for the job instead of just picking his favorite. He's learning to work with Gwen instead of against her, to trust Max's instincts even when they don't make sense. But he's also starting to realize that being a hero means never really resting. There's always another fight, another villain, another town that needs saving. And the Omnitrix doesn't care if he's tired or scared or just wants to be a normal kid for a day. It keeps going, and so does he. The nightmares start small. Ben dreams he's floating, weightless, looking down at his own body from above. In the dream, he's not himself. He's something else, something cold and hollow, and when he tries to speak, his voice echoes like it's coming from the bottom of a well. He wakes up sweating, and the Omnitrix is glowing faintly on his wrist, like it's reacting to something. Gwen asks if he's okay. Ben lies and says he's fine, just a bad dream, nothing to worry about. But the dreams keep getting worse. Night after night, he sees himself as Ghost Freak, the ghost-like alien he unlocked early in the summer, But the alien isn't under his control. It moves on its own, whispers things Ben doesn't understand, and in one particularly vivid nightmare, it reaches up and tears the Omnitrix off his wrist from the inside. Max notices Ben is avoiding Ghost Freak during fights. When Ben needs to phase through a wall or turn invisible, he picks a different alien instead, even if it makes the fight harder. During a battle with a group of tech thieves, Ben chooses to go upgrade and hack their security system instead of going Ghost Freak and simply phasing through it, even though Ghost Freak would have been faster and cleaner. Max asks why, and Ben doesn't have a good answer. He just says Ghost Freak feels wrong, like wearing someone else's skin, and he doesn't like using it. He's right to be worried. The breaking point happens during a school field trip that Max insists they attend to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Ben, Gwen, and a busload of classmates are touring an old mansion on the outskirts of town, listening to a tour guide drone on about architectural history and local legends. Ben is bored out of his mind. Gwen is actually taking notes, and everything seems perfectly normal. Then the Omnitrix activates on its own. Ben feels the watch heat up against his skin, the faceplate glowing brighter than usual, and before he can even touch it, the transformation begins. He's pulled into Ghost Freak's form without consent, his body shifting into the ghostly alien against his will, and immediately he knows something is catastrophically wrong. This isn't a normal transformation. His consciousness is being pushed aside, shoved into a corner of his own mind, while something else takes control. Ghost Freak phases through the bus wall and disappears into the mansion before anyone can react, and Ben is trapped inside his own alien form, screaming silently while the creature pilots his body like a stolen car. Inside the mansion, Ghost Freak sheds its outer skin like a snake molting, revealing a second layer underneath, something skeletal and alien, with a single massive eye and an upside-down skull, tentacles writhing from where a mouth should be, and an aura of cold that makes the air itself freeze. This is the real Ghost Freak, the consciousness that's been trapped inside the Omnitrix since Ben first used the form, and it's been waiting months for this moment. The creature calls itself Ziziskayir, and it's not just some random alien. It's an ectonurite, a species that can possess other beings and feed on their fear, and it's been slowly building strength inside the Omnitrix, feeding off Ben's terror every time he transformed into it. Every nightmare was real. Every whisper was Ziziskayir testing the boundaries of its prison, looking for weaknesses. Now that it's free, it has plans. Plans that involve possessing Ben permanently and using the Omnitrix to conquer Earth, turning it into a world of eternal darkness where ectonurites can thrive. Ziziskayir starts by taking control of the Circus Freak trio, Zombozo, Acid Breath, Thumbskull, and Frightwig, who happen to be hiding out in the mansion's basement after escaping from prison. The ectonurite possesses Zombozo first, then uses him to dominate the others through a combination of fear and psychic control. Together, they trap Ben's classmates inside the mansion and begin a ritual that will let Ziziskayir possess Ben's body while he's awake, bypassing the Omnitrix's safeguards entirely. Ben is still conscious somewhere inside the Ghost Freak form, fighting to regain control, but Ziziskayir is too strong. The alien has had months to study Ben's mind, to learn his fears and weaknesses, and it uses that knowledge ruthlessly. It shows Ben visions of everyone he cares about dying, of the Earth covered in darkness, of himself as a puppet dancing on Ziziskayir's strings. Outside, Gwen and Max realize what's happened. They've seen enough alien threats to recognize possession when they see it, and Max pulls out a device he's been carrying since his plumber days, a psychic amplifier that can boost mental resistance. He gives it to Gwen and tells her to get close enough to Ben to use it, to give him a fighting chance to break free from the inside. But getting close to Ziziskayir means getting through the circus freaks first, and they're more dangerous than usual with an ectonurite controlling them. Zombozo isn't just draining happiness anymore, he's spreading fear, turning the trapped students into screaming, paralyzed victims. Acid Breath's spit is more corrosive than before, melting through walls and floors. Thumbskull hits harder, moves faster, and Frightwig's hair has become razor-sharp tentacles that slice through anything they touch. Gwen fights them using everything she's learned over the summer, hacking their equipment, setting traps, using her growing magical skills to counter Zombozo's fear aura with protective charms she barely understands. Max takes on Tonic Thumbskull and Acid Breath directly, using plumber weapons and decades of combat experience to hold them off. Meanwhile, Ben is still fighting inside his own mind. Ziziskayir has him cornered in a mental landscape that looks like the mansion, but wrong. Walls that shift and breathe, doors that lead nowhere, and shadows that whisper his name. The ectonurite tells him it's useless to resist. that the Omnitrix belongs to Zscaer now, that Ben was never meant to have it in the first place. And for a moment, Ben almost believes it. He's tired of fighting, tired of being scared, tired of carrying a weapon he barely understands. But then he hears Gwen's voice, distorted and distant, calling his name. The psychic amplifier is working, giving him a lifeline back to reality, and Ben grabs onto it with everything he has. He remembers something Max told him weeks ago. The Omnitrix responds to the user's will, and if Ben is strong enough, he can force it to change, even without touching the faceplate. Ben focuses everything he has on one thought: get out of my head. The Omnitrix flares green, responding to his determination, and Ben forces a transformation. Not back to human, Zscaer would just possess him again immediately, but into a different alien, Benwolf, the Loboan form he picked up from one of Zscaer's servants earlier that summer. Benwolf's primal instincts are strong enough to resist possession. The form is all rage and hunger and territorial fury, with no room for Enwelka. Ectonia right to slip in and take control. Zscaer recoils, stunned, and Ben uses that moment of freedom to attack. The fight is brutal. Ben doesn't have time to think strategically. He just lets Benwolf's instincts take over, tearing into Zscaer with claws and fangs. The Ectonorite fights back, using telekinesis to throw furniture and debris, but Benwolf is faster, stronger, and absolutely furious at being used as a puppet. Gwen joins the fight using a spell she found in one of the magical texts she's been studying, a banishment incantation designed to drive out possessing spirits. It's not perfect. She stumbles over some of the words, and the magic flickers uncertainly, but it's enough to weaken Zscaer, to make the Ectonierite vulnerable. Ben sees his opening. He grabs Zscaer and drags it toward the mansion's large front windows, where morning sunlight is starting to stream in. Ectonierites burn in sunlight. It's their greatest weakness, the one thing they can't survive. Zscaer screams, its body smoking and peeling away as the light touches it, and it barely manages to phase through the mansion wall and escape into the shadows before it's destroyed completely. The circus freaks collapse, freed from the Ectonierite's control, and the ritual circle drawn on the floor cracks and fades. The mansion fight ends. The students are freed, confused and terrified, but alive. Ben transforms back to human and immediately collapses, exhausted and shaking. When he checks the Omnitrix, the Ghost Freak silhouette is gone. The transformation is no longer available, and Ben doesn't know if that's because Zscaer took it when it escaped, or because the watch locked it away to protect him. Max explains what he knows about Ectonierites later that night, after they've driven far away from the mansion and found a quiet place to park. Ectonierites are one of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They reproduce by leaving genetic samples in other beings, using their DNA like seeds that eventually grow into new Ectonierites. Zscaer was likely using the Omnitrix as a prison escape plan from the start, waiting for Ben to use the form enough times that it could build up strength and break free. Gwen asks if Zscaer is gone for good, and Max doesn't have an answer. Ectonierites are hard to kill permanently. They can survive as long as a single strand of their DNA exists somewhere in the universe. The sunlight hurt it, drove it away, but there's no guarantee it's actually dead. Ben doesn't sleep well for weeks after that. Every shadow looks wrong. Every noise in the dark makes him reach for the Omnitrix, and the worst part is knowing that one of his own alien forms became a villain, that the watch he's been trusting to protect him was also carrying his enemy around, waiting for the right moment to strike. This is the first time the Omnitrix has felt like a curse instead of a gift. Ben's curiosity has always been a problem, and it finally catches up to him in the worst way possible. He's been wondering for months what's inside the Omnitrix, how it actually works, whether he can unlock more aliens manually instead of waiting for the watch to give them to him. The restrictions frustrate him: the 10-minute time limit, the random selection of aliens, the way the watch sometimes gives him the wrong transformation at the worst possible moment. So one afternoon, while Max and Gwen are shopping in a small town for supplies, Ben sits in the rust bucket and decides to take matters into his own hands. He finds a toolkit in Max's storage compartment, grabs a screwdriver, and starts carefully prying at the Omnitrix's faceplate. It doesn't want to come off. The device seems designed to resist tampering, and Ben has to use more force than he's comfortable with, wedging the screwdriver under the edge and levering it up bit by bit. He tells himself he's being careful, that he knows what he's doing, but the truth is he has no idea what he's messing with. The faceplate finally pops loose with a sharp click, and the second it does, the Omnitrix glitches. Hard. The hourglass symbol starts flickering erratically. Sparks shoot out of the exposed circuitry, and Ben feels the watch heating up against his skin, burning hot enough that he yelps and tries to pull it off. But of course, it won't budge. Transformations start happening randomly, without him touching the faceplate. Ben tries to go forearms and ends up as a hybrid. Forearms' massive body with heat blasts flames pouring out of his fists, his skin flickering between red rock and molten lava. He tries to revert to human and gets stuck as a gray matter upgrade fusion, his tiny body crackling with electrical energy that shorts out half the Rust Bucket systems. The watch cycles through combinations he's never seen before, some of them powerful, most of them unstable, and none of them under his control. He spends 20 minutes in a wild mutt stinkfly hybrid, blind but flying, before the transformation finally times out and dumps him back into human form. By the time Max and Gwen get back, Ben is sitting on the floor of the Rust Bucket, surrounded by smoking electronics, and the Omnitrix's faceplate is hanging loose on his wrist like a broken tooth. Max takes one look at the situation, and his expression goes from concerned to furious in about half a second. "What did you do?" Ben tries to explain, stumbling over his words, but Max cuts him off. He pulls out a plumber toolkit and starts running diagnostics, muttering under his breath about reckless kids and unauthorized modifications. The news isn't good. The Omnitrix's core is destabilized, the genetic database is corrupted, and the safety protocols that prevent dangerous hybridization are offline. Before they can figure out how to fix it, the situation gets worse. Dr. Animo reappears, and he's been building something in secret, a device, called the Genetic Disruptor, designed to mutate every living thing on Earth in a single pulse. He's set up his lab in an abandoned observatory, surrounded by cages full of mutated animals, and he's ready to activate the device and reshape the planet's entire ecosystem. Ben tries to stop him, but the malfunctioning Omnitrix keeps transforming him mid-fight. He goes forearms to smash through Animo's security, but halfway through punching a wall, he shifts into XLR8 and ends up running face first into the rubble. He tries Diamond Head to block Animo's laser fire, but the transformation glitches into Ripjaws, leaving him gasping for water in the middle of a dry observatory. It's a disaster. Ben can't hold a form long enough to land a solid hit, and Animo is laughing the entire time, calling Ben a failed experiment, a genetic mistake. Gwen ends up saving the day. She hacks Animo's computer system, finds the Disruptor's control codes, and triggers a shutdown sequence that fries the machine from the inside. Animo tries to stop her, but Max tackles him, and the two of them crash through a display case full of preserved specimens. The Disruptor explodes in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. The mutated animals escape into the wild, which is a problem for another day, and Animo is knocked unconscious by a piece of falling debris, but the damage to the Omnitrix is done. The faceplate won't close, and the glitches keep happening, random transformations that trigger whenever Ben's adrenaline spikes. Max uses plumber tools to force a hard reset, plugging a strange device into the exposed circuitry and running a command sequence that makes the Omnitrix glow so bright Ben has to close his eyes. When the light fades, the watch reboots, the faceplate clicks back into place, and something unexpected happens. A new hologram appears, floating above the Omnitrix's face. Master Control activated. Suddenly, Ben doesn't have a time limit. He can transform instantly, stay in alien form as long as he wants, and switch between aliens with just a thought. It's everything he's ever wanted, and it makes him feel unstoppable. He spends the next 2 days showing off. He uses XLR8 to run errands across 3 states in under an hour, picking up groceries, returning library books Gwen forgot about, and racing back before anyone notices he's gone. He uses heat blasts to cook dinner, actual gourmet food, not the usual road trip junk, by precisely controlling the temperature of each ingredient. He uses Stinkfly just because it's fun to fly, soaring over mountains and through canyons like a living helicopter. Gwen tells him he's being reckless, that unlimited power is going to make him sloppy. Max warns him that there's usually a cost to this kind of upgrade, that the Omnitrix locked Master Control away for a reason, but Ben doesn't listen. For the first time since he got the watch, he feels like he's actually in control, like he's the one making the decisions instead of the device telling him what he can and can't do. And then Kevin comes back. He's escaped the null void somehow, clawing his way through that nightmare dimension and back to Earth, and he's not alone. He's brought Vilgax with him, or rather, he's made a deal with what's left of Vilgax. The warlord survived the explosion of his ship, but he's weaker now, recovering in a hidden base somewhere in Earth's orbit. His body is a patchwork of cybernetic implants and regenerating tissue, and he's barely strong enough to walk. But his mind is as sharp as ever, and when Kevin offers to deliver the Omnitrix in exchange for power, Vilgax agrees. Kevin steals a high-tech ship from a military base, using his energy absorption powers to bypass the security systems, and uses it to ambush the rust bucket in the middle of the Nevada desert. He comes in fast and hard, strafing runs that tear up the highway and force Max to swerve off the road. The ship lands, and Kevin steps out. He's faster than before, stronger, and he's learned to control his mutation well enough to shift between alien forms at will. When Ben goes 4 arms, Kevin matches him instantly, copying the transformation. When Ben switches to Diamond Head, Kevin does the same, and their crystal constructs clash in showers of green shards. It's like fighting a twisted mirror, and Ben realizes too late that Master Control has made him arrogant. He's been relying on instant transformations, on the ability to switch forms without thinking, and he hasn't been practicing strategy or patience. Kevin exploits that ruthlessly, baiting Ben into reckless attacks and countering with precise strikes. The fight spills across the desert, tearing up highways and abandoned buildings. Gwen tries to help, using her laptop to hack Kevin's stolen ship and shut down its weapon systems, but Kevin just absorbs more energy and keeps fighting. Max fires plumber weapons from the rust bucket, but Kevin's absorption powers make him nearly immune to energy attacks. It's only when Ben switches to Cannon Bolt and actually stops to think, using the alien's armored form defensively instead of offensively, rolling in calculated patterns that force Kevin into a corner, that he starts to gain the upper hand. But Kevin has one more trick. He activates a beacon on the stolen ship, calling Vilgax, and the warlord responds. His ship drops out of orbit, still damaged but functional, and Vilgax himself appears on the view screen, his scarred face filling the display. "Deliver the boy to me, Kevin, now." Kevin grins, grabs Ben while he's still in cannon bolt form and drags him toward the ship's teleporter. Ben struggles trying to switch forms, but Kevin has learned to disrupt the Omnitrix's signals by generating electromagnetic interference. The transformations stutter and fail, leaving Ben trapped. Max makes a desperate call. He pulls out the null void projector, the same device they've used to trap criminals and contain threats, and he doesn't hesitate. He aims it at Kevin and Ben together and fires. The portal opens under their feet, a swirling vortex of green energy, and all 3 of them fall through. Ben, Kevin, and Max, who jumps in at the last second rather than let Ben face this alone. They tumble through the dimensional barrier and land hard in the null void, a nightmare dimension that looks like something from a fever dream. The sky is a sickly green, pulsing with diseased light. The ground is jagged and unstable, made of broken rock and twisted metal that shifts under their weight. And every shadow hides something that wants to kill them. Predators that have been trapped in this prison for decades, hungry and vicious. Kevin immediately starts fighting, trying to use the chaos to grab the Omnitrix, but the prisoners who live in the null void don't care about their grudges. They see fresh meat, new victims, and they attack without warning. Ben and Kevin are forced to team up again, just to survive long enough to find a way out. Ben cycles through aliens, fighting off creatures he's never seen before, insectoid monsters with acid blood, shapeshifters that mimic his transformations, pack hunters that move like liquid shadow. Kevin uses his mutation to match them, absorbing energy from the environment and using it to power his attacks. Max fights alongside them, using plumber weapons and decades of experience to keep them alive. He's slower than he used to be, his reflexes not quite as sharp, but he makes up for it with strategy and sheer determination. At one point, a pack of null void predators corners them against a cliff, and Max holds them off alone while Ben and Kevin look for an escape route. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Gwen is panicking. She's never used the null void projector before, and she doesn't know how to bring them back. She spends hours going through Max's old plumber files, searching for instruction manuals, schematics, anything that might help. The files are encrypted, written in languages she doesn't recognize, and she's running out of time. She finally finds a recall function buried in the device's settings, hidden behind layers of security protocols. It takes her another hour to crack the codes, using every hacking trick she knows, and when she finally activates the recall, she's not even sure it's going to work. The portal reopens in the null void just as Ben and Max are cornered by a massive creature that looks like a cross between a dragon and a centipede. They dive through the portal, leaving Kevin behind, and it snaps shut before he can follow. The last thing Ben hears is Kevin screaming his name, swearing revenge, promising that this isn't over, and then there's silence. Back on Earth, sprawled on the desert sand, Ben checks the Omnitrix and finds that Master Control is gone. The hard reset after the null void exposure locked it away again, and he's back to the 10-minute time limit and manual selection. Ben wants to be angry, wants to demand that Max help him unlock it again, but he's too exhausted to care. He just sits on the ground, staring at the watch, and realizes that maybe Max was right. Maybe unlimited power isn't something he's ready for yet. Maybe the restrictions are there to keep him from getting himself killed. Vilgax, watching from orbit through surveillance drones, sees the whole fight and makes a note. The boy is powerful, but he's still a child, emotional, impulsive, and that's a weakness Vilgax can exploit when the time is right. For now, the warlord retreats back into the shadows, letting his injuries heal, letting his anger grow. The Omnitrix will be his. It's only a matter of time. Gwen's laptop starts glowing in the middle of the night, and when she opens it, she finds a message from herself, or rather from an older version of herself, calling from 20 years in the future. The message is brief, displayed in glowing green text that pulses like a heartbeat. "We need your help. Bring Ben, coordinates attached." She wakes Ben and Max, shows them the message, and before any of them can decide if this is a good idea or an elaborate trap, the laptop projects a beam of light that swallows all three of them whole. The sensation is like being pulled through water. Cold, disorienting, and over in seconds. When the light fades, they're standing in Bellwood, but it's not their Bellwood. The buildings are taller, sleeker, covered in alien technology that's been integrated seamlessly into the architecture. Flying cars drift through the sky on anti-gravity engines. The streets are patrolled by automated drones that scan pedestrians with soft blue light. And in the center of the city stands a massive tower with a green hourglass symbol glowing at the top, visible from miles away. This is Ben's future. And he's not sure he likes what he sees. They're greeted by future Gwen almost immediately. She appears in a flash of pink energy, now a fully trained sorceress in a sleek purple outfit that looks like it belongs in a superhero movie. Her hair's longer, pulled, back in a practical ponytail, and there's a confidence in the way she carries herself that the younger Gwen doesn't have yet. She looks at her younger self and smiles, but there's something sad in that smile, like she's remembering something she lost along the way. "It's weird seeing you this young," future Gwen says. "I forgot how much we used to worry about everything." Young Gwen wants to ask 1,000 questions, but future Gwen is already moving, leading them through the city toward the tower. People recognize them as they walk. Not just Ben, but all three of them. Pedestrians wave, kids ask for autographs, and young Ben realizes with a mixture of pride and discomfort that in this future, he's famous. The tower is even more impressive up close. The interior is all polished metal and holographic displays, with aliens and humans working side by side in what looks like a high-tech command center. And at the center of it all, standing in front of a massive view screen showing real-time threats across the globe, is Ben 10,000. The 30-year-old version of Ben is taller, broader, with a customized Omnitrix that's integrated directly into his arm like a living tattoo. He's wearing a black and green uniform that looks tactical and professional, and when he turns to look at his younger self, there's no warmth in his expression, just cold assessment. "You're late," Ben 10,000 says, not to young Ben, but to future Gwen. "The temporal window was supposed to open 10 minutes ago." "Traffic," future Gwen says dryly. Ben 10,000 doesn't smile. He just rattles off a mission briefing like he's reading from a script. An alien villain named Exoskull has stolen a time travel device and is planning to rewrite history by preventing the plumbers from ever forming. If he succeeds, Earth will be defenseless against alien invasions, and the timeline will collapse into chaos. Ben 10,000 needs help stopping him, but he's too busy managing the city's defenses to leave his post, so he's recruited his younger self to do the fieldwork while he coordinates from the tower. Young Ben is horrified. This is what he becomes? A guy who treats hero work like a corporate job, who has thousands of aliens unlocked but never smiles, who schedules his family time between saving the world? He looks at future Gwen and asks, "Is he always like this?" Future Gwen hesitates, then nods. He hasn't taken a day off in years, hasn't hung out with friends, hasn't done anything that wasn't related to protecting the planet. He's effective, but... She trails off, and young Ben finishes the sentence in his head. But he's miserable. The mission itself is supposed to be straightforward. Young Ben, young Gwen, and young Max team up with future Gwen to track down Exoskull, who's hiding in an abandoned plumber base on the edge of the city. Future Max is supposed to join them, but he's busy. It's his birthday, and there's a ceremony planned, but of course he's postponing it. It's to help with the mission, because that's what heroes do. They find Exoskull in the depths of the base, surrounded by stolen time travel equipment and temporal anomalies, bombes, that make the air shimmer like heat waves. The villain is massive, covered in black exoskeleton armor that makes him look like a walking tank, and when he sees them, he doesn't bother with threats or monologues. He just attacks. The fight is chaos. Exoskull has weapons that can accelerate or reverse time in localized areas. One blast ages a chunk of the wall to dust. Another rewinds a broken support beam too before it was damaged. Young Ben tries to go for arms, but Exoskull hits him with a time reverse beam that forces him to de-transform before he's even finished transforming. Future Gwen fights with magic that young Gwen can barely comprehend, spells that bend reality, summon energy constructs, and counter Exoskull's temporal weapons with carefully timed shields. Young Ben watches her work and realizes just how much his cousin is going to grow, how powerful she's going to become. But it's young Ben's unpredictability that ultimately wins the fight. Ben 10,000 is coordinating from the tower, giving tactical commands through a comlink, telling young Ben exactly which aliens to use and when. But young Ben ignores him. He goes wild mutt when Ben 10,000 tells him to use Diamond Head. He uses XLR8 speed to dodge instead of forearm strength to block. And when Exoskull tries to predict his moves based on Ben 10,000's tactical patterns, young Ben throws him off completely by doing something stupid and reckless that somehow works. He goes Cannonbolt, lets Exoskull's time reverse beam hit him, and uses the force de-transformation as a springboard to transform again immediately, something Ben 10,000 would never consider because it's inefficient. The rapid double transformation overloads Exoskull's targeting system, and in that moment of confusion, future Gwen binds him with a spell, and young Max delivers the knockout blow with a plumber stun weapon. The time travel device is destroyed, the timeline is safe, and when they return to the tower, Ben 10,000 is waiting with an expression young Ben can't quite read. "That was sloppy," Ben 10,000 says. "You wasted energy, left yourself vulnerable, made at least 6 tactical errors I counted." Young Ben bristles, ready to argue, but Ben 10,000 continues. "But it worked, and I wouldn't have thought of it." He pauses, and for the first time, there's something other than calculation in his eyes. Something like regret. "I've forgotten how to improvise. How to take risks. I've gotten so focused on being the perfect hero that I've forgotten why I started doing this in the first place." Later, after Future Max arrives and they have a brief birthday celebration in the tower's break room, awkward and rushed but genuine, young Ben confronts his future self privately. They stand on the tower's observation deck, looking out over the city, and young Ben tells him exactly what he thinks. "I don't want to end up like you," he says. "You're not happy, you're just functioning. And if that's what the Omnitrix does to people, if that's what being a hero means, then I don't want it." Ben 10,000 doesn't respond right away. He just looks at his younger self, and young Ben can see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of 20 years of constant fighting. Finally, Ben 10,000 speaks. "I got so focused on being the best hero I could be that I forgot the people I was trying to protect. I forgot that hero work is supposed to protect the things you care about, not replace them." He turns to face young Ben fully. "Don't lose yourself in the watch. It's a tool, not a life, and don't let it turn you into someone who only knows how to fight." Before they leave, Future Max pulls young Max aside and tells him something that makes the older man's expression go soft. Young Gwen hugs her future self, and future Gwen whispers something in her ear that makes young Gwen's eyes go wide, and young Ben looks at the city one more time, at the tower with the glowing hourglass symbol, and promises himself he'll remember this. The trip back to the past is quiet. Ben sits in the rust bucket staring at the Omnitrix, and Max asks him what he's thinking. "I don't want to end up like that," Ben says. "All work and no life. I don't want the watch to be the only thing I am." Max smiles and tells him he won't, as long as he remembers to take breaks, to spend time with people who aren't villains or victims, and to actually live his life instead of just fighting through it. Gwen adds that she'll make sure to annoy him enough that he never forgets what it's like to be a normal kid. It's a lesson Ben isn't sure he's ready to learn yet, but he files it away, somewhere in the back of his mind, and promises himself he'll try. The traveling light show rolls into a small Arizona town whopped with bright neon signs and promises of the most amazing visual experience you'll ever witness. The posters are everywhere, on bus stops, telephone poles, shop windows, showing swirling patterns of light and claims that the show will change the way you see reality. Ben, Gwen, and Max attend out of sheer boredom. They've been on the road for weeks without a major incident, and Max thinks they could use some normal entertainment for once. The show is held in an old theater on Main Street, packed with locals and tourists, and for the first 20 minutes, it's actually impressive. Lasers cut through the darkness in geometric patterns. Holograms dance across the stage, creating three-dimensional images of impossible landscapes. The music is synchronized perfectly, building to crescendos that make the whole audience gasp. And then the patterns on the screen start to shift, becoming more complex, more hypnotic, and Ben feels his thoughts slowing down like someone is pulling him underwater. He's being hypnotized. So is half the audience. The villain running the show is a criminal named Sublimino, a washed-up magician who discovered that certain light frequencies can bypass the conscious mind and plant suggestions directly into the subconscious. He uses this technology to turn crowds into obedient thieves, directing them to rob stores, empty ATMs, and deliver the money back to his truck while they're in a trance. By the time people wake up, Sublimino is long gone, and they don't remember a thing. Ben wakes up in the middle of robbing a jewelry store, his hands full of necklaces and rings, with no memory of how he got there. The Omnitrix timer is going off. He must have transformed at some point and just timed out, and the shock of the beeping is enough to snap him back to awareness. He finds Gwen and Max still hypnotized, following Sublimino's instructions like sleepwalkers. Gwen is methodically cleaning out a cash register, moving with mechanical precision, and Max is loading stolen goods into the back of a van. Both of them have the same glassy-eyed stare, and when Ben tries to shake them awake, they just brush him off and keep working. Ben has to fight his way through a crowd of hypnotized civilians to reach Sublimino's truck, which is parked behind the theater. The villain sees him coming and tries to hypnotize him again, projecting the swirling light patterns directly at Ben's face, but Ben goes wild mutt, an alien with no eyes, immune to visual tricks, and tears the light projector apart with his claws. The hypnosis breaks immediately. The crowd wakes up, confused and disoriented, and Sublimino tries to run. But Max, now back to his senses and furious about being controlled, tackles him before he can reach his getaway car. The police arrive minutes later, and Sublimino is arrested while trying to explain that it was all just performance art. Gwen doesn't remember anything from her time under hypnosis, and she's furious about it. She hates the idea that someone could control her like that, make her do things without her consent, turn her into a puppet. She spends the rest of the day researching mental defenses, reading articles about meditation and cognitive resistance techniques, and she barely talks to Ben or Max. Later that night, parked under the stars, Ben tries to tell her it wasn't her fault, but she cuts him off. "I know it wasn't my fault," she says, "but that doesn't make it better. I don't ever want to feel that helpless again." Ben doesn't have a good response to that, so he just sits with her in silence, and eventually she falls asleep leaning against his shoulder. A few days later, they stop in a city where a TV network is filming a new superhero show. The star of the show is a guy named Captain Nemesis, a self-proclaimed hero in a flashy costume who claims to have been fighting crime for years. He's charming, good-looking, and the network is promoting him as the hero America deserves. Ben watches an episode being filmed and immediately realizes the guy is a fraud. All his heroics are scripted, carefully choreographed fight scenes against stunt actors in monster costumes. His powers come from a high-tech suit built by the network's special effects team, and his entire career is built on publicity stunts and carefully edited footage. Captain Nemesis sees Ben as a threat, a real hero with real powers, and he starts sabotaging the set to make Ben look bad. He rigs explosions to go off when Ben is nearby, making it look like Ben is causing the destruction. He frames Ben for accidents that damage expensive equipment. He even tries to get Ben kicked off the studio lot by claiming he's a safety hazard. The situation escalates when a real villain attacks the set, A disgruntled special effects technician has built a suit of his own, a weaponized exoskeleton covered in plasma cannons, and he's planning to destroy the studio in revenge for being fired. Captain Nemesis freezes when the real danger shows up. He's never fought an actual dangerous enemy before, and when the villain starts tearing through the set, Nemesis runs and hides behind a prop wall. Ben stops the villain as Cannonbolt rolling through the set and smashing the exoskeleton's power core, but the fight destroys half the studio in the process. Sets collapse. Cameras are crushed, and Captain Nemesis, seeing his career falling apart, tries to take credit for the victory anyway. He tells the news cameras that he coordinated the defense and guided the young hero, making it sound like Ben was just following his orders. But the security footage tells a different story, and when it leaks online, Nemesis's career implodes overnight. The network cancels his show, his sponsors drop him, and he's left shouting at reporters about how he's the real hero while security escorts him off the lot. Later, while they're driving away from the chaos, Gwen asks Ben if it bothers him that he doesn't get credit for half the things he does. Ben shrugs and says he's not doing it for the credit, he's doing it because it needs to be done. Gwen calls him a dork, but she's smiling when she says it. The body swap incident happens a week later, and it's Charmcaster's fault. She's been tracking Gwen ever since their last fight, studying her routines and habits, learning everything she can about her rival. And when she finally makes her move, it's during a quiet stop at a roadside diner in the middle of nowhere. Charmcaster casts the spell from across the parking lot, hidden behind a glamour that makes her invisible to normal sight. The magic hits Gwen like a physical blow, and suddenly she's falling, and when she opens her eyes, she's looking at the world through Charmcaster's eyes, trapped in the sorceress's body while Charmcaster pilots Gwen's. The fake Gwen acts sweet and cooperative for about 10 minutes, just long enough to get Ben and Max to lower their guard. She compliments Max's driving, offers to help with the dishes, even suggests they stop at a tourist trap Gwen would normally complain about. Ben thinks she's being weirdly nice, but he doesn't question it. Then Gwen starts sabotaging everything. She picks fights with strangers at a gas station, calling them names for no reason. She shoplifts from a convenience store, pocketing candy bars and magazines while Ben is distracted. She insults the cashier loud enough that people stare. And when they get back to the Rust Bucket, she makes a point of complaining about how boring the trip has been, how she wishes they'd just go home and stop pretending to be heroes. Ben notices something is wrong, but he assumes Gwen is just in a bad mood. It's not until Gwen tries to steal the Omnitrix while he's asleep, sneaking over to his bunk and attempting to pry the watch off his wrist, that he realizes this is something more than teenage attitude. He wakes up to find her hand on his wrist, pulling at the Omnitrix, and when he confronts her, she plays innocent, says she was just curious about how it worked, that she wanted to see if she could help fix some of the glitches. But Ben knows Gwen. He knows the way she talks, the way she moves, the little details that make her herself. This person wearing Gwen's face doesn't move right. She holds the laptop differently. She doesn't know the password to Gwen's email. And when Ben asks her a question about something that happened earlier that summer, a private moment only the two of them shared, she gets the answer wrong. Meanwhile, the real Gwen is stuck in Charmcaster's body, dealing with magical tattoos she doesn't understand and a constant voice in her head trying to teach her dark spells. She's being pulled toward anger, toward violence, and she has to actively fight against Charmcaster's muscle memory that wants to cast curses and hexes. She tries to find Ben and Max, but every time she gets close, Charmcaster in Gwen's body steers them away. Finally, Gwen realizes she has to prove her identity using something only the real Gwen would know. Something so private that Charmcaster couldn't have learned it through observation. She uses Charmcaster's magic to create an illusion, projecting a memory into the air. Ben crying after the Ghost Freak incident, sitting alone in the Rust Bucket at 3 in the morning, genuinely terrified that he was losing his mind. It's something Ben made Gwen promise never to tell anyone about, something he's deeply ashamed of. The illusion appears in front of Ben and Max, clear and detailed, and Ben's face goes pale. Only Gwen would know about that. Only Gwen would remember exactly what he said, the way he looked. "It's me," Gwen says through Charmcaster's body. "I swear it's me." Ben believes her, and together they lure Charmcaster into a trap, Ben pretending he's figured out how to unlock Master Control again, offering to share it with Gwen if she'll help him. Charmcaster takes the bait, gets close enough, and Gwen uses a reversal spell she found buried in Charmcaster's memories. The magic unravels, the bodies swap back, and Charmcaster, realizing she's been outmaneuvered, escapes in a flash of purple energy, laughing as she goes. "This isn't over, cousin," she calls out. "Next time, I won't stop at humiliation." Gwen collapses the moment she's back in her own body, exhausted and shaken. She tells Ben that being in Charmcaster's body felt wrong, like wearing a suit made of anger and bitterness, like drowning in someone else's hate. "I don't know how anyone can live like that," she says quietly. Ben doesn't have an answer. He just helps her to her feet and tells her he's glad she's back. They don't talk about the memories she used to prove her identity. Ben appreciates that more than he can say. The first sign of trouble is the lightning, not regular lightning. This is purple, crackling with energy that doesn't belong on Earth, and it strikes in places where no storm clouds exist. A desert highway in New Mexico, a cornfield in Kansas, the parking lot of a truck stop where the Tennysons are refueling. Each strike leaves behind scorch marks in the shape of strange symbols, alien writing that Max recognizes from his plumber days. The symbols are a warning, or maybe a beacon, calling something to Earth. The second sign is the werewolf. It comes out of nowhere, nowhere during a night drive through the desert, massive and feral, with orange fur and claws, patriarchal that tear through the asphalt like paper. The creature doesn't attack immediately, it just stands in the middle of the road, illuminated by the rust bucket's headlights, and howls. The sound is horrifying, echoing across the empty desert, and Ben feels something primal respond to it. Fear, yes, but also recognition, like some part of him knows what this creature is even though he's never seen one before. Max tries to swerve around it, but the werewolf moves with impossible speed, leaping onto the rust bucket's roof and tearing at the metal. Ben transforms into 4 arms, climbs onto the roof, and fights the creature hand to hand while Max tries to keep the RV on the road. The fight is brutal and fast. The werewolf is stronger than it looks, faster, and when it bites Ben during the struggle, he feels something change. The wound burns, the Omnitrix glows, and the watch absorbs the DNA from the bite, adding a new transformation to the playlist. Ben manages to throw the werewolf off the rust bucket, and it disappears into the desert night. When they stop to check the damage, Ben looks at the Omnitrix and sees a new silhouette, a Loboan, the same species as the creature that attacked them. He calls it Benwolf, and when he transforms into it, for the first time, the power is intoxicating. Enhanced strength, speed that rivals XLR8, and senses sharp enough to track a scent across miles. But there's something unsettling about it too. The form feels aggressive, primal, and Ben has to fight to stay in control when he uses it. The wolf instincts want to hunt, to chase, to bite, and it takes real effort to remember he's supposed to be a hero. Max recognizes the species. Loboans are native to a planet called Anerphados, a world where it's always night, and the dominant species are creatures that humans would call monsters. If a Loboan is on Earth, it's either lost or it's here on purpose, and neither option is good. The werewolf attacks again a few nights later, and this time it's not alone. There's a mummy with it, an alien called Athep Kufan, wrapped in ancient bandages and radiating decay. The mummy is searching for something buried on a farm in rural Iowa, and when Ben and Max investigate, they find a cache of corrodium hidden in an underground bunker. Corrodium is a radioactive element that mutates anything it touches, warping DNA and creating monsters. The plumbers used to keep strict control over every gram of it in the galaxy, and finding it buried on Earth means someone has been planning this for a long time. The mummy is collecting corrodium for someone else, someone giving orders from off-world. Max tries to stop it, but the creature is nearly indestructible. Bullets pass through the bandages without effect. Fire just makes it angrier. Even Ben's strongest aliens struggle to land a solid hit. Forearms punches sink into the mummy's body and get stuck. Heat blast flames are absorbed into the bandages, and Diamond Head's crystals shatter against the creature's ancient magic. It's only when Ben uses Benwolf's enhanced senses to track the mummy's weak point, a small amulet hidden deep in the wrappings, pulsing with the same purple lightning they've been seeing, that they manage to destroy it. Ben tears the amulet out with his claws, and the mummy crumbles to dust. But the creature's last words, before it falls apart, are a warning. He is coming. The darkness rises. The third monster shows up at a NASA research facility in Florida, and this one is different. It's not a savage beast or a mindless corpse. It's a scientist. Dr. Victor is an alien from Anur-Phaedos, a Transilian covered in metal armor and powered by electricity. He's been orchestrating the entire operation, using the werewolf and mummy as scouts, while he prepares for something larger. Victor's plan is horrifying in its simplicity. He wants to activate a corrodium energy shield around Earth, bathing the entire planet in radiation and mutating every living thing on the surface. It would turn Earth into another Anur-Phaedos, a world of eternal night populated by creatures that thrive in darkness and decay, a world where monsters rule and humans are prey. Ben, Gwen, and Max race to stop him, and the mission splits across two locations. Ben and Gwen storm Victor's lab inside the NASA facility, fighting through automated defenses and mutated test subjects, while Max heads to the International Space Station to shut down the corrodium shield before it activates. The lab fight is chaos. Victor has turned the entire facility into a death trap. Electric floors, Tesla coils that shoot lightning, and cages full of creatures he's been experimenting on. Ben cycles through Benwolf, Upgrade, and Cannonbolt, trying to find a form that can breach Victor's armor, while Gwen hacks the facility's systems and slowly shuts down his backup generators. Victor himself is a terrifying opponent. His armor amplifies electricity to devastating levels, and he can channel it through the metal walls and floor, turning the entire room into a weapon. Ben tries to fight him, as four arms and gets electrocuted so badly he's forced to de-transform. He tries Diamond Head and the electricity arcs through the crystals, nearly frying him from the inside. It's only when Gwen manages to cut the power to the entire facility that Ben gets an opening. He goes Upgrade, merges with Victor's armor, and shorts out the entire suit from the inside, overloading the circuits and leaving the scientists powerless. Meanwhile, in space, Max is fighting his own battle. The International Space Station has been taken over by Victor's drones, and the corrodium shield is already charging, counting down to activation. Max has minutes, maybe less, to disable it, and the only way to do that is to physically tear out the shield's power core. He fights through the drones, using plumber weapons and zero-gravity combat training from his younger days, and reaches the core with seconds to spare. He rips it out with his bare hands, ignoring the radiation burns, and hurls it into space just as the countdown hits 0. The shield flickers and dies. The corrodium radiation disperses harmlessly into the vacuum, and Max collapses against the station wall, exhausted and injured, but alive. Back on Earth, Ben stands over Victor's defeated form, and the scientist looks up at him with something close to pity. "You think you've won," Victor says, "but you haven't stopped anything. You've only delayed the inevitable. He is already here." "Who?" Ben demands. "Who's coming?" Victor smiles, showing teeth that are too sharp. "Ziziskyer, the one you thought you killed. He sent us, and he's not done with you." The revelation hits Ben like a physical blow. Ghost Freak didn't die when he blasted it into the sun. It survived somehow, and it's been coordinating this entire invasion from the shadows, using Victor and the other monsters as pawns in a plan to take over Earth. The werewolf, the mummy, Victor, they were all working for the Ectonurite, and now that the corrodium plan has failed, Ziziskyer is moving to Plan B. The final confrontation happens at the space station. Gwen uses a spell to teleport Ben and herself into orbit, and they arrive just as Ziziskyer manifests, tearing through the station's walls like they're made of tissue paper. The creature is stronger than before, having spent weeks feeding on fear across the galaxy and building power. It's absorbed the terror of entire populations, drunk deep from worlds it conquered, and now it's bloated with stolen life force. Ziziskyer goes for Ben immediately, trying to possess him again, and Ben feels that familiar cold pushing into his mind. But he's ready this time. He's been practicing mental defenses with Max, building walls in his thoughts, and when Ziziskyer tries to slip in, Ben fights back. He transforms into Ben Mummy, the Thep Kufan form he absorbed during the earlier fight, and the ancient magic that protects the mummy's body also protects against possession. Ectonurites can't inhabit something that's already technically dead. Ziziskyer recoils, genuinely surprised, and Ben uses that moment to grab the creature. Gwen casts a binding spell, wrapping chains of pink energy around the Ectonurite, and together they drag it toward the station's observation window. The station is rotating, and in a few seconds, direct sunlight is going to pour through that window. Ectonurites burn in sunlight. It's their one true weakness. Ziza Skayer struggles, screaming, trying to phase away, but Gwen's spell holds. Ben keeps it pinned, using Ben Mummy's strength and his own determination, and when the sunlight hits, the Ectonurite starts to burn. The creature's body disintegrates, ash and smoke peeling away in layers. It screams Ben's name, swearing revenge even as it dies, and then it's gone. Just ashes floating in zero gravity, scattering into the void. This time, Ben makes sure. He watches every particle of ash drift away into space. Watches until there's nothing left, and only then does he let himself relax. They return to Earth using Gwen's teleportation spell. The space station is saved, patched up by NASA engineers who arrive hours later. The monsters of Anur Phaetos are sent back to their homeworld, defeated and leaderless. And Ben sits in the rust bucket, staring at the Omnitrix, trying to process what just happened. Ziza Skayer came from inside the Watch. It was one of his transformations, part of his DNA library, and it used that connection to nearly destroy everything he cared about. The Omnitrix gave him power, yes, but it also gave him enemies he never would have faced otherwise. Later, as they drive away from the facility, Ben asks Max a question that's been haunting him for weeks. Will the Omnitrix ever stop attracting danger? Max doesn't have a good answer. He just says that power always attracts attention, and the more power you have, the more enemies you make. It's not fair, but it's the truth. Ben looks down at the watch, at the green glow pulsing softly on his wrist, and wonders if it's worth it. And then he thinks about the people he's saved, the worlds he's protected, the futures he's prevented from going dark. He's already made his choice. The question doesn't matter anymore. The road continues, and so does the fight. The city they're visiting is quiet, almost boring, and Ben is starting to relax for the first time in weeks. No monsters, no villains, no mysterious purple lightning or body-swapping sorcerers. Just a normal stop on the road trip where they can actually enjoy a meal without someone trying to kill them. That peace lasts about 2 hours. The ship lands in the middle of the park at dusk, sleek and alien, with curves that suggest it was built for speed rather than combat. The figure that steps out is tall, blue-skinned, and immediately recognizable to Max, whose expression shifts from surprise to something more complicated, guilt mixed with old affection. Her name is Xylene, and she's a warrior, a smuggler, and someone Max worked with during his plumber days. She's also the one who was supposed to deliver the Omnitrix all those years ago. Xylene explains the truth Ben has been suspecting for months. The Omnitrix was never meant for him. It was supposed to go to Max, someone trained and experienced, someone who could protect it properly and use it responsibly. But the delivery went wrong. She describes the attack, Vilgax's ship dropping out of hyperspace, weapons blazing, tearing through her defenses like they were paper. She tried to fight back, tried to complete the mission, but her ship was destroyed. In the chaos, as her vessel broke apart, she launched the Omnitrix in an emergency pod, programmed to find Max Tennyson and deliver itself into his hands. But the pod's navigation was damaged. It crashed near Bellwood, and instead of finding a trained plumber, it was discovered by a 10-year-old kid on a camping trip. Ben doesn't know how to feel about that. On one hand, it's validating. He's not the chosen one, just a kid who got lucky, or unlucky. On the other hand, it means every fight, every nightmare, every close call has been because of a mistake, a cosmic accident that put the most powerful weapon in the galaxy on the wrist of someone completely unprepared for it. Xylene doesn't stay long. She and Max catch up briefly, sharing old war stories and quiet looks that make Gwen uncomfortable. There's history between them, the kind of history that Max clearly doesn't want to discuss in front of his grandkids, and Xylene seems to understand that. But before she can leave, Vilgax's leftover drones attack, drawn by the energy signature of her ship. These aren't the clunky models from earlier in the summer. These are upgraded, faster, deadlier, with weapons that can actually hurt Ben's alien forms. The fight is short, but brutal. Ben cycles through 4 arms, Diamond Head, and XLR-8, while Xylene provides covering fire with weapons from her ship. Max uses plumber tech he's been keeping hidden, and Gwen hacks the drone's targeting systems to turn them against each other. When the last drone falls, smoking and sparking, Xylene tells Max that Vilgax isn't done. He's still out there, still healing, still planning, and the Omnitrix will never stop being a target as long as it exists. She offers to take it to finish her original mission and deliver the watch to the plumber's scattered remnants, but Max declines. Ben has proven himself, earned the right to keep it, and removing it now would be more dangerous than leaving it where it is. Xylene doesn't argue. She just gives Max one last look, something sad and final passing between them, and then her ship lifts off, disappearing into the night sky. As they watch her go, Ben asks Max about her, about their history, but Max just shakes his head and says, "Some stories are better left in the past." The next disaster happens faster than anyone expects. During a fight with Dr. Animo, who's back with yet another evolutionary weapon, this one designed to devolve humans into primates, the Omnitrix is damaged. Not glitching, not malfunctioning, but actively counting down to a self-destruct sequence that will destroy everything within several miles. Ben panics. The display shows 90 minutes and counting, and every attempt to stop it just makes the countdown speed up. Max tries every plumber override code he knows, running through sequences that haven't been used in decades, but nothing works. The countdown is locked, and they have less than 2 hours to find a solution before the Omnitrix explodes and takes Ben, the rust bucket, and half the surrounding area with it. Gwen frantically searches through Max's old files, looking for anything that might help, and she finds a partial solution buried in corrupted data. The Omnitrix was created by someone named Azimuth, a Galvan scientist living somewhere in the Andromeda galaxy. If they can find him, he might be able to shut down the self-destruct. It's a long shot, but it's the only shot they have. Tetrax shows up minutes later, his ship materializing in orbit and teleporting him directly to their location. He's detected the Omnitrix's distress signal from halfway across the galaxy, and he offers to take them to Azimuth. Max, despite his distrust of mercenaries, agrees. They have no other choice. They board Tetrax's ship, and within hours, they're traveling faster than light, heading toward a part of space Ben has only seen in science fiction movies. The journey is tense. The countdown continues ticking, now under an hour, and Ben can feel the watch getting warmer against his skin. Tetrax explains that Azimuth is notoriously reclusive and doesn't like visitors, especially ones who've been misusing his inventions. Ben, stung by the implication, argues that he's been doing the best he can, but Tetrax just gives him a long look and says, "We'll see if Azimuth agrees." Their first stop is a prison ship called Incarsicon, a massive facility orbiting a dead star, where they're supposed to meet a contact who knows Azimuth's current location. But when they arrive, the ship is under attack. Vilgax is here. The warlord has been tracking the Omnitrix's distress signal just like Tetrax, and he sees this as his best chance to steal it, while Ben is vulnerable. His forces are sweeping through Incarsicon, releasing prisoners and causing chaos to cover their search. The countdown hits 30 minutes. Ben fights his way through the prison ship, transforming despite the risk, because sitting still and waiting to explode isn't an option. He goes cannonbolt to smash through sealed doors, XLR8 to dodge Vilgax's drones, upgrade to hack the prison systems and seal off sections to slow the warlord's advance. Tetrax's contact is a smuggler named Myax, who reluctantly gives them coordinates to Azimuth's homeworld before fleeing the chaos. They barely escape ahead of Vilgax, teleporting back to Tetrax's ship just as the warlord corners them in the prison's central hub. The countdown hits 15 minutes. The journey to Galvan Prime takes another precious 10 minutes, and when they arrive, Ben can feel the Omnitrix vibrating against his wrist, the self-destruct entering its final phase. The planet is beautiful. Cities built on circuits, technology integrated with nature, machines the size of mountains, but they don't have time to appreciate it. Azimuth isn't on Galvan Prime. He's hidden himself away on a moon called Xenon, refusing all contact with the outside world. They land on Xenon with 4 minutes left, and Ben, Gwen, Max, and Tetrax make the final sprint to Azimuth's workshop on foot. The workshop is a fortress, defended by automated turrets and force fields that activate the moment they approach. Azimuth's voice comes through an intercom, telling them to leave, that he doesn't care about their problems, that the Omnitrix should never have been activated in the first place. 3 minutes. Max pleads with him through the intercom, explaining that a child is going to die if Azimuth doesn't help. Azimuth's response is cold. Then perhaps the child shouldn't have been playing with tools he doesn't understand. 2 minutes. Ben, furious and terrified, starts yelling at the intercom. He tells Azimuth that he didn't ask for this, didn't ask to be hunted by warlords and monsters, didn't ask to carry the weight of a weapon he barely understands. but he's tried to use it responsibly, tried to save people, tried to be worth the power he was given. And if that's not good enough, Ben shouts, then maybe you should have built a better watch. 1 minute. There's a long silence. Then the door opens. Azimuth is small, even for a Galvan, a frog-like alien who looks ancient and exhausted, with eyes that have seen too much. He studies Ben for a moment, muttering something about children and their tantrums, then shuffles inside, motioning for them to follow. 30 seconds. Azimuth examines the Omnitrix with practiced efficiency, his tiny fingers moving faster than Ben can track, accessing panels and circuits that Ben didn't even know existed. He mutters to himself the entire time, a stream of technical jargon mixed with complaints about unauthorized modifications and tampering with delicate systems. 10 seconds. Azimuth enters a command code and the countdown stops. Just stops, frozen at 3 seconds, and then disappears entirely. The self-destruct is deactivated. Ben sags in relief, his legs giving out, and he sits down hard on Azimuth's workshop floor. Gwen is crying quietly. Max has his hands on his knees, breathing hard. And Tetrax just nods, like he knew it would work out all along. But Azimuth isn't done. He starts lecturing Ben about the proper use of the Omnitrix, how it was designed as a tool for peace and understanding between species, not as a weapon for a child to play with. The Omnitrix's true purpose is to let beings experience life as other species, to walk in their skin and understand their perspective, to build bridges instead of walls. Ben listens, and somewhere in the middle of the lecture, he realizes Azimuth is right. He's been treating the Omnitrix like a toy, like a video game where he gets to be different superheroes. He's lost sight of what it's actually supposed to be, a tool for connection, for empathy, for understanding. Before they can leave, alarms start blaring. Vilgax has found them. He's been tracking them across the galaxy, and now that they're stationary and vulnerable, he's launching a full assault on Xenon. His forces storm the moon, and the final battle begins. Ben unlocks a new alien during the fight, way big, a massive Tauca star that towers over buildings and can match Vilgax's ship in size. The transformation is overwhelming, the sheer scale of it disorienting, but Ben adapts quickly. He grabs Vilgax's ship with hands the size of houses, tears it open like a tin can, and hurls the warlord into deep space. Vilgax survives, and he always does, but the battle is over. Xenon is safe. The Omnitrix is stable, and Azimuth grudgingly admits that Ben might have potential after all. "You're reckless," Azimuth says, "impulsive. You make poor tactical decisions, and you rely too much on brute force." Ben waits for the but. "But you care," Azimuth continues. "You actually care about the people you protect, and that matters more than tactics." He pauses, then adds quietly, "The Omnitrix doesn't make you a hero, Ben Tennyson. Your choices do." Ben nods, and for the first time since this whole summer started, he feels like he actually understands what that means. The journey back to Earth is quiet. Tetrax drops them off near the rust bucket, refuses any payment, and disappears back into space with a promise that they'll meet again. And Ben, sitting in the back of the RV as Max drives them toward whatever comes next, looks at the Omnitrix and sees it differently now. It's not a gift. It's not a curse. It's a responsibility. And Ben is starting to realize that responsibility is heavier than any alien transformation could ever be. Ben wakes up to the smell of pancakes, and that's the first sign that something is wrong. The rust bucket doesn't have a kitchen good enough to make pancakes that smell this good, and when he sits up, he realizes he's not in the RV at all. He's in his own bedroom in Bellwood, sunlight streaming through windows he hasn't seen in months. He goes downstairs and finds his parents making breakfast. They're smiling, asking about his summer, acting like the road trip ended weeks ago and everything is back to normal. Gwen is there too, not arguing with him for once, just sitting at the table and laughing at his dad's jokes. Even the Omnitrix seems to be working perfectly. When Ben tests it, every transformation is exactly what he selects. No glitches, no random timing out. It's perfect. Too perfect. Ben plays along at first, enjoying the normalcy, but something nags at him. His mom mentions events that haven't happened yet. His dad references a conversation Ben doesn't remember having. And when Ben tries to leave the house, he finds himself back at the breakfast table, like the world is looping. He realizes he's trapped in a dream machine, and the truth comes crashing back. Enoch and the Forever Knights captured him during their last encounter. This perfect day is a simulation designed to keep him docile while they work on removing the Omnitrix. Ben forces himself to remember the real world, the fights, the fear, the weight of responsibility. And the simulation starts to crack. The walls flicker, his parents' faces glitch, and suddenly he's awake, strapped to a table in a Forever Night facility, with Enoch standing over him. "Impressive," Enoch says. "Most subjects can't break free on their own." The Knights have him surrounded, and they're using a device that's slowly heating the Omnitrix, trying to force it to release its grip on his wrist. Ben can feel his skin burning, and he knows he has minutes at most before permanent damage sets in. That's when Max and Gwen storm the facility. They've been tracking the Knights for days, ever since Ben disappeared from a rest stop in Colorado, and they've brought weapons, real plumber weapons that Max swore he'd never use again. The assault is quick and brutal, more military operation than rescue mission, and Ben realizes his grandfather really was one of the best. Ben breaks free during the chaos, goes for arms, and tears through the Knights' defensive line. Enoch tries to activate a failsafe that would trap them all inside the facility, but Gwen hacks it using codes she found in Max's old files. They escape with minutes to spare, leaving the Knights scattered and furious. Later, sitting in the rust bucket with ice on his burned wrist, Ben asks Max how he knew where to find him. Max just taps his temple and says, "Plumber instincts, and a lot of old favors called in." The next incident happens a few days later, during what should be a simple stop for supplies. Ben is fighting a group of looters at a warehouse when he transforms into Ditto, a small alien that can clone itself infinitely. He's used Ditto before, but never in a serious fight, and he quickly discovers the form's major weakness. Every clone is independent, and if one of them gets captured, it can't just disappear when the timer runs out. Dr. Animo shows up with a device that can trap the clones in suspended animation, and he manages to catch 3 of them before Ben realizes what's happening. The doctor threatens to dissect the clones, to study their biology, and create an army of his own duplicate soldiers. Ben has to negotiate, something he's terrible at. He tries to bluff, saying the clones aren't real, that they'll disappear in a few minutes, but Animo knows better. The clones are real as long as they exist, and they can feel pain, fear, and everything Ben feels. Max handles the negotiation, trading a piece of plumber tech, something relatively harmless but advanced enough to satisfy Animo's curiosity, for the clone's release. It works, barely, and Ben absorbs his duplicates back into himself just as the Omnitrix times out. But the experience shakes him. Those clones were him. They had his thoughts, his memories, his fear. And if Animo had succeeded, Ben would have been responsible for their suffering. Around the same time, Max takes them to an old plumber meeting spot, a natural spring hidden in the mountains of Montana, supposedly abandoned decades ago. But when they arrive, they find other retired plumbers there, old friends of Max's who've been keeping an eye on alien activity even after the organization disbanded. One of them has brought a device, a temporal stabilizer that can temporarily reverse aging. It's experimental, dangerous, and Max immediately tells them to shut it down. But the device is already active, and when it malfunctions, Max gets caught in the field. He doesn't disappear. He doesn't collapse. He just changes. Within seconds, Max Tennyson is 25 years old again, looking exactly like he did during his prime plumber days, calm, muscular, energetic, and completely disoriented. Young Max doesn't remember Ben or Gwen. His last memory is from decades ago, during a mission, and he thinks the temporal displacement is an enemy attack. He immediately goes into combat mode, treating Ben and Gwen like potential threats, and it takes both of them working together to calm him down and explain what happened. While they work on fixing the stabilizer, Ben gets to see his grandfather in action at his peak. Young Max is faster, stronger, and sharper than the man Ben knows, and watching him train, running through combat drills, dismantling and reassembling weapons blindfolded, Ben realizes just how much Max has sacrificed to stay with them. He gave up this life, this strength, this purpose, and he did it to be a normal grandfather, to give Ben and Gwen a chance at a normal summer. They manage to fix the stabilizer and restore Max to his proper age, but not before young Max tells Ben something that sticks with him. "If I could go back and do it all again, I wouldn't change a thing. Being a plumber was important, but being there for family, that's what actually mattered." Back in his older body, Max doesn't remember saying that, but Ben does. The wedding invitation arrives in the mail, forwarded from Max's old address, and when he opens it, his expression shifts from confusion to resignation. It's an invitation to a plumber reunion, disguised as a wedding between two former agents, but Max knows it's really a truce ceremony between the plumbers and their old alien rivals, the Pantophage Collective. He doesn't want to go. The last plumber reunion ended in a shootout, 3 arrests, and a bar fire that made local news. But the invitation specifically requests his presence sent, and turning it down would be seen as an insult. They drive to the ceremony, held at a remote mountain lodge, and Ben immediately realizes this is going to be a disaster. Half the guests are human plumbers, retired but still carrying themselves like soldiers. The other half are aliens from species the plumbers used to hunt, and the tension in the room is thick enough to cut. The wedding is supposed to symbolize peace. A human plumber marrying an alien defector, 2 sides coming together. But old grudges don't die easily. During the reception, arguments break out. Someone throws a punch, and within minutes, the entire wedding devolves into a brawl. Ben tries to stop it as XLR-8, moving fast enough to separate the fighters, but there are too many of them. Gwen uses magic to create barriers, but they keep getting smashed. And Max, caught between his loyalty to his old team and his desire to actually see peace happen, tries to talk everyone down. It's the bride and groom who finally end it. They stand in the middle of the chaos and just start dancing. Slow, deliberate, ignoring the fight around them. And gradually, people stop to watch. The moment is absurd and beautiful, and somehow it works. The fighting stops, people catch their breath, and the ceremony continues. Later, Max tells Ben that sometimes peace isn't about grand gestures or perfect solutions. Sometimes it's just about people choosing to be better than their worst instincts, one moment at a time. Back on the road, they run into a gang of highway pirates, a group of criminals who've been hijacking RVs and trucks along empty highways, stripping them for parts and leaving the owners stranded. The Rust Bucket is their next target. The pirates are good. They box in the RV using motorcycles and a semi-truck, force Max to pull over, and start dismantling the Rust Bucket while Ben, Gwen, and Max are held at gunpoint. Ben could transform and stop them easily, but there are civilians from other hijacked vehicles being held hostage, and any fight could get them killed. So Ben waits. He lets the pirates take apart the RV, watching as they strip away solar panels, tires, even Max's carefully organized storage compartments. And he waits until the pirates get careless, until they're focused on their haul instead of their prisoners. Then he goes upgrade, merges with one of the pirates' motorcycles, and turns their entire convoy against them. Bikes crash into each other, the semi-truck's brakes lock up, and in the confusion, Max and Gwen free the hostages. They recover the Rust Bucket's parts and spend the next 2 days putting it back together. It's frustrating, tedious work, and Ben complains the entire time. But when they finally get the RV running again, there's something satisfying about it. Like they've reclaimed a piece of home. The wrestling incident happens in Texas at a local underground fighting league that's less sport and more organized crime. Ben enters the ring as 4 Arms, using a fake name because Gwen's laptop was destroyed during the pirate attack and he needs money to replace it. He figures he'll win a few fights, collect the prize money, and leave before anyone figures out what he is. It works at first. 4 Arms is unstoppable against normal human fighters, and the crowd loves him. But the league is run by mobsters who've been exploiting 2 mutant brothers, aliens stranded on Earth, forced to fight to pay off a debt they'll never be able to repay. Ben realizes what's happening when he's matched against one of the brothers. The alien doesn't want to fight, keeps trying to surrender, but the mobsters shock him with a collar every time he refuses. Ben throws the match, taking a dive so obvious the crowd boos, and uses the distraction to tear the collars off both brothers. The mobsters try to stop him, pulling guns and threatening the crowd, but Ben goes cannonbolt and literally rolls through them, knocking them out without seriously hurting anyone. The brothers escape, the league gets shut down, and Ben walks away with just enough money to buy Gwen a new laptop. She figures out what he did. The story makes local news, and she doesn't say anything, just quietly starts backing up her files more often. These smaller adventures blend together as autumn approaches. Ben fights a blob creature in Nevada, stops a plant-controlling villain in Oregon, and deals with yet another robot duplicate trying to replace him in Arizona. None of these enemies are world-ending threats, so the Tennysons handle them quickly and efficiently, but each fight feels heavier than the last. Ben is getting tired. Not physically, the Omnitrix handles most of the heavy lifting, but emotionally, he misses his room, his parents, his normal life. He misses school, which is something he never thought he'd say, and he's starting to wonder when, if ever, they get to go home. One night, parked under a sky full of stars, Ben asks Max the question that's been haunting him for weeks. When do we get to stop running? Max doesn't answer right away. He just looks at the road ahead, and finally says, when it's safe, or when we decide we've done enough, whichever comes first. Ben wants to ask when that will be, but he already knows the answer. Probably never. There will always be another villain, another town that needs help, another reason to keep going. The Omnitrix doesn't let him rest, and neither does his conscience. That thought sits heavy in his chest as the rust bucket rolls into the next town, toward the next fight, toward whatever comes next. The Forever Nights have been quiet for weeks, and that makes Max nervous. Enoch isn't the type to give up after one failed attempt, and the longer the nights stay silent, the more dangerous they become. Max's instincts are proven right when they intercept a coded transmission. The Knights are gathering for something big, and they're calling in every favor, every hidden cell, every asset they have. The transmission leads them to Mount Rushmore, to the hidden plumber base that Max used to call home. The base should be abandoned, its systems offline, but when they arrive, they find it fully operational. Someone has reactivated the facility and they've turned it into a fortress. The Forever King reveals himself then. He's not just another masked soldier, he's Driscoll, a disgraced former plumber who Max worked with decades ago. Driscoll was caught selling alien technology to the highest bidder, using his plumber clearance to smuggle weapons and artifacts off-world. Max was the one who turned him in, and Driscoll has been plotting revenge ever since. He's been building an army, a coalition of Ben's enemies called the -10. The roster is horrifying. Charmcaster, the circus freaks, Rojo with her upgraded armor, Animo with his mutant creatures, and others, villains who fought Ben individually but never worked together. United under Driscoll's command, they're planning a coordinated assault on the remaining plumber outposts, determined to steal every piece of alien technology on Earth and use it to protect humanity from alien threats. The irony isn't lost on Ben. Driscoll claims to be defending Earth, but he's willing to work with alien criminals, use alien weapons, and destroy human lives to do it. The assault on Mount Rushmore begins at dawn. The -10 attacks from multiple angles, Charmcaster teleporting strike teams inside the base, Animo releasing mutant creatures through the ventilation systems, the circus freaks causing chaos and confusion. Driscoll himself wears powered armor stolen from the plumber archives, a prototype suit that amplifies strength and generates energy shields. Ben, Gwen, and Max are outnumbered 10-1, but they have home field advantage. Max knows every corridor, every hidden passage, every defense system in the base. He guides them through the facility using old plumber traps to thin out the enemy forces. They're joined by Cooper, a young technopath they met earlier in the summer, who has the ability to control machines. Ends with his mind. Cooper shuts down the -10's communications, turns their own automated defenses against them, and generally makes their lives miserable. The battle is brutal and exhausting. Ben cycles through every alien in his arsenal, fighting different members of the -10 in different parts of the base. He faces Charmcaster in the archives, their fight destroying centuries of records. He battles Animo in the medical bay, dodging mutant creatures and experimental serums. He duels Rojo in the vehicle hangar, using Upgrade to turn her own motorcycle against her. Gwen fights alongside him, using every spell she's learned over the summer. She's not as powerful as Charmcaster, but she's more creative, more willing to improvise. When Charmcaster summons a demon, Gwen summons a shield. When Charmcaster tries to trap her in a mirror dimension, Gwen shatters every mirror in the room. Max faces Driscoll directly, and the fight is personal. They were partners once, trusted each other with their lives, and that makes the betrayal cut deeper. Driscoll accuses Max of abandoning the plumbers, of choosing family over duty, of letting Earth become vulnerable by retiring. Max doesn't disagree. He just says that duty without compassion isn't heroism, it's just violence with better PR. The turning point comes when Driscoll activates the base's power core, trying to overload it and destroy the entire facility. He figures if he can't have the plumber technology, no one should. The core is fueled by sub-energy, a volatile compound that's been stable for decades but will explode if destabilized. Ben has one option: Upchuck, an alien that can eat anything and convert it to energy. He's never tried to eat something this dangerous before, but there's no other way to contain the reaction. He transforms, dives into the reactor chamber, and starts devouring the sub-energy. It tastes like battery acid and burning rubber, and his stomach feels like it's going to explode. But he keeps eating, the reactor powers down, the countdown stops, and Ben burps out a beam of energy so powerful it tears a hole through the mountain. Driscoll's armor is destroyed in the blast. The -10 scatters, their members fleeing in different directions, and the plumber base, damaged but intact, stands as proof that some things are worth protecting. In the aftermath, Max officially decommissions the base. He can't maintain it alone, and leaving it operational just makes it a target. They pack up everything important, weapons, records, personal mementos, and seal the facility behind them. Ben asks if Max regrets it, giving up the last piece of his old life. Max just looks at the mountain, at the monument to American heroes carved into stone, and says, "I don't need a base to be a plumber, I never did." This showdown pulls together almost every thread from the road trip: plumbers, knights, recurring villains, and gives a sense of closure to that secret war that's been happening behind the scenes all summer. The time travel happens accidentally. Gwen is experimenting with a spell she found in an old book, trying to create a simple scrying window to look into the past, but she mispronounces a crucial word and tears a hole through time instead. The portal opens in the middle of the rust bucket, swallows Ben, and deposits him 20 years into the future. He lands in Bellwood, but it's different. The city is cleaner, more advanced, with alien technology integrated into everyday life. And in the suburbs, in a house that looks suspiciously like his parents' place, he finds an adult version of himself celebrating a birthday party. Ben Tennyson is 30 years old, married, and throwing a party for his son Kenny, who's turning 10 today. The resemblance is unmilable. Kenny has Ben's face, his attitude, and most importantly, he's about to receive his own Omnitrix, a custom-built version designed specifically for him by Azimuth. Young Ben watches from the bushes as adult Ben gives Kenny the watch, and he sees himself reflected in his son's excitement. The same wonder, the same immediate desire to try every transformation, the same sense that this device is going to change everything. But adult Ben is different from Ben 10,000. He's not cold or distant. He laughs with his son, hugs his wife, makes time for family, even though he's still saving the world regularly. He's found balance, somehow, between being a hero and being a father. The party is interrupted when Kevin 11 attacks. He's escaped from the null void again, and he's targeting Ben's family specifically, trying to hurt adult Ben the only way he knows will work. But Kevin isn't alone. He has a son too, a teenager named Devlin who inherited his father's powers. Kenny sneaks out to help fight despite his father's orders to stay inside and meets Devlin on the battlefield. The two kids realize they're mirrors of each other, sons of enemies, inheriting their father's conflict. But unlike Ben and Kevin, they're not interested in continuing the cycle. Young Ben reveals himself during the fight, helping his older self stop Kevin without seriously hurting him. Together, the three Bens, young, adult, and Kenny with his new Omnitrix, drive Kevin off. But more importantly, Devlin chooses a different path than his father. He helps them, betrays Kevin's plan, and proves that children don't have to repeat their parents' mistakes. After the fight, adult Ben talks to his younger self. He tells him about the journey ahead, the battles, the losses, the times he almost gave up, but also the victories, the friendships, the moments that made everything worthwhile. "You're going to make mistakes," adult Ben says. "You're going to lose people, and there are going to be days when you wonder if any of this is worth it." "And?" young Ben asks. "And it is, every single day of it." Adult Ben smiles. "You're going to be okay, Ben. Better than okay." The portal reopens, pulling young Ben back to his own time, and the last thing he sees is adult Ben playing with his son, teaching him his first transformations, laughing as Kenny accidentally goes ripjaws and flops around on the lawn. Back in his own time, Ben sits quietly in the rust bucket, processing what he saw. That future, the one with family, with balance, with actual happiness, is possible. He doesn't have to end up like Ben 10,000, cold and isolated. He can choose something better. Together with the earlier Ben 10,000 future, this paints multiple paths ahead. A distant battle-obsessed Ben, or one who still finds room for family in the middle of constant danger. The choice is his to make. The summer officially ends in August, and Ben tries to go back to normal school life in Bellwood. It's harder than he expected. Sitting in a classroom, listening to teachers drone on about algebra and history feels surreal after months of fighting aliens and saving the world. His classmates complain about homework and cafeteria food, and Ben wants to scream that he's fought interdimensional warlords, and none of this matters. But he keeps the Omnitrix hidden, wears long sleeves even in the heat, and pretends to be normal. At night, he, Gwen, and Max still go out on patrol, stopping alien incidents that Max's old contacts alert them to. It's exhausting, trying to live two lives at once, and Ben can feel the strain building. The breaking point comes during what should be a routine fight. A group of alien smugglers is trying to move weapons through Bellwood, and Ben stops them as four arms. But during the fight, Gwen uses a new spell, something experimental she's been practicing, and it backfires. The magic interacts with the Omnitrix in an unexpected way, creating a feedback loop that leaves Ben stuck in alien forms. He transforms into Heat Blast and can't transform back. When the timer finally runs out, he shifts directly into Wild Mutt instead of reverting to human, then XLR8, then Gray Matter. The Omnitrix is cycling through transformations randomly, and Ben has no control over it. He tries to hide it at first, wearing baggy clothes and avoiding people, but it's impossible to maintain. He sets his homework on fire as Heat Blast. He accidentally runs through a wall as XLR8, and when he shows up to school as Gray Matter, hiding in Gwen's backpack, the secret is effectively over. At the same time, a galvanic mechamorph warrior named Malware arrives on Earth, tracking a specific energy signature. He's looking for a Toka star, one of the massive Way Big aliens, and he believes Ben is somehow connected to its disappearance. The truth is more complicated. Ben's transformation into Way Big created a temporary clone, a separate entity that went rogue and is now rampaging across the Pacific. Malware is relentless. He attacks Ben at school, at home, anywhere the Omnitrix's signal leads him, and because Ben is stuck cycling through transformations, he can't fight back effectively. Every time he tries to use forearm strength, he shifts into Ripjaws and gasps for water. Every time he tries XLR8 speed, he becomes Stinkfly instead. The chase drags Ben across the world. Tetrax shows up to help, having detected Malware's presence, and together they track the rogue Toku star to a remote island in the Pacific. But when they arrive, they discover the truth. The Toku star isn't a clone or a rogue transformation, it's Azimuth. The scientist was trying to fix the Omnitrix's malfunction remotely, but his repair attempt went wrong and accidentally transformed him into one of the aliens in the database. He's been stuck as a Way Big for days, unable to change back, rampaging because he's terrified and doesn't know how to control the form. Ben, Gwen, Max, and Tetrax work together to calm Azimuth down and restore him to his proper form. It requires going inside the Omnitrix itself, using Upgrade to dive into the device's inner workings and manually resetting the transformation lock. Inside the Omnitrix, Ben sees the true complexity of the device. It's not just a weapon or a tool, it's a living database, constantly updating and adapting, learning from every transformation. And at its core is Azimuth's original vision, a device that would let beings understand each other by experiencing life from another perspective. They fix the malfunction. Azimuth transforms back into his Galvan form, and Ben regains control of the Omnitrix, the random cycling finally stopping. Before Azimuth leaves, he tells Ben something important. You've been treating the Omnitrix like a responsibility you didn't choose. But every day you put it on again, that's a choice. You're choosing to be a hero, and that matters more than how you got the watch in the first place. Back in Bellwood, Ben makes another choice. He sits down at his desk, opens his homework, and actually completes it. No aliens, no transformations, just a kid doing his algebra problems. It's mundane and boring and somehow exactly what he needs. The summer is over. But the story isn't done yet. Time doesn't always flow in one direction, and some endings happen in different worlds, different versions of the story. This is one of those endings. In another version of events, Ben is older, not much, maybe 12 or 13, and he's back in Bellwood permanently, trying to maintain a normal life while still being a hero. The Omnitrix has been on his wrist for years now, and people are starting to notice. Strange things happen around Ben Tennyson. Buildings get saved at the last second. Criminals get stopped by creatures no one can explain. His classmates are getting suspicious. His teachers are asking questions. And Ben is struggling to keep the two halves of his life separate. Then Eon arrives. The villain appears without warning, a being made of time itself, with the ability to freeze moments and move through history like someone flipping through pages in a book. He claims to be Ben's future self, twisted and corrupted, and he wants to rewrite history to ensure his own existence. Eon's plan is simple. Freeze Bellwood in a single moment, creating a pocket of stopped time where he can exist forever. To do this, he needs to take control of the Omnitrix and use it to anchor the time loop. The fight against Eon is disorienting. Time keeps skipping, rewinding, looping back on itself. Ben experiences moments out of order, seeing his friends in danger before the danger actually happens, fighting battles that might not be real. And through it all, Eon keeps taunting him, saying they're the same person, that Ben will eventually become him. Ben refuses to believe it. He's seen his future. He's met Ben 10,000, adult Ben, versions of himself that stayed heroic. But Eon plants doubt, suggesting that those futures only exist because Ben saw them, and that without those glimpses, he would have naturally evolved into something darker. The climax happens in Bellwood's clock tower, where Eon is performing the ritual to freeze time. Ben has to fight through temporal duplicates, versions of himself from different points in the timeline, all controlled by Eon, to reach the villain. The final confrontation forces Ben to make a choice. He can let Eon complete the ritual and exist in a perfect, frozen moment forever, or he can disrupt the time loop and risk an unknown future. Ben chooses the unknown. He destroys the time anchor, shattering the loop, and Eon dissolves, screaming that Ben has doomed them both. The clock tower collapses. Time snaps back into its proper flow, and Ben is left standing in the rubble, unsure if he made the right choice. The aftermath is complicated. The battle was public, witnessed by hundreds of people, and Ben's secret identity is effectively destroyed. Everyone knows he's the one with the Omnitrix now. His school holds an assembly. News crews camp outside his house. And Ben has to figure out how to be a hero when the whole world is watching. There's also a possible ending where Vilgax returns to Bellwood just as summer vacation ends, forcing Ben to reveal his identity to the entire city during a massive battle. The fight tears through downtown, and Gwen gets dragged directly into Ben's school life afterward, having to explain to his classmates why she knows so much about alien biology. These alternate paths don't all line up with the main timeline, but together they sketch out different ways that First Summer could have ended. Public hero, secret defender, or something in between. Each ending shows a different version of who Ben could become, and all of them are possible. The multiverse is vast, and every choice creates new branches, new futures. Ben's story doesn't have one ending, it has infinite endings, each one shaped by the decisions he makes in the moment. By the time the dust settles on summer road trips, Monster of the Week stops, future glimpses, movies, and alternate endings, the core of the story is still simple. One kid, one watch, one family that refuses to break apart. The Rust Bucket pulls into Bellwood on a quiet afternoon in late September. The town looks exactly the same as when they left, but Ben feels like he's aged years. He's fought warlords and sorcerers, traveled through time and space, seen versions of himself that terrify him and versions that give him hope. His parents are waiting at the house, and the reunion is emotional. His mom cries, his dad tries to act tough and fails, and Ben realizes how much he's missed them, missed the simple comfort of home. School starts the next week, and Ben goes through the motions. He sits in class, takes notes, talks to friends who have no idea what he did over the summer. When they ask, he just shrugs and says it was boring. Just a road trip with his grandpa and cousin, nothing special. At night, the Omnitrix still glows on his wrist. Aliens still crash land on Earth. Problems still need solving. But now Ben has a routine. Homework first, hero work second. It's not perfect, and he still struggles with balance, but he's trying. Gwen enrolls in martial arts classes and continues practicing magic in secret. She's accepted that she's part of this world now, this strange space between normal life and cosmic threats, and she's determined to be ready for whatever comes next. Max stays in Bellwood, officially retired but always keeping an eye on the sky. He's given up his last plumber base, his weapons, his old life. But he hasn't given up being a plumber. He's just redefined what that means. It means being there for family. It means teaching the next generation. It means knowing when to fight and when to let go. The Forever Knights are still out there, scattered but not defeated. Charmcaster is plotting her next move. Kevin is somewhere in the Null Void, probably planning escape number 700. Vilgax is healing, building strength, waiting for his moment. The threats never really end, but that's okay, because Ben isn't alone anymore. He has Gwen, who challenges him and saves his life in equal measure. He has Max, who knows more than he says and cares more than he shows. He has Azimuth's begrudging respect, Tetrax's occasional help, and a growing network of allies across the galaxy who've heard about the kid with the Omnitrix and decided he's worth supporting. One evening, sitting on the roof of his house and watching the stars, Ben thinks about all the versions of himself he's met. The cold, efficient Ben 10,000. The balanced, happy adult Ben. The possible future where he became Eon. And he realizes something important. None of those futures are inevitable. They're just possibilities, paths he might take depending on the choices he makes. Every morning when he wakes up and straps the Omnitrix back on, that's a choice. Every time he transforms to help someone instead of showing off, that's a choice. Every time he decides to do homework instead of just relying on his powers, that's a choice. The Omnitrix doesn't define him. His choices do. Gwen joins him on the roof, and they sit in comfortable silence for a while. Finally, she says, "Do you ever regret finding that watch?" Ben thinks about it seriously. He thinks about the fear, the pain, the nights he couldn't sleep because he was afraid Vilgax would come back. But he also thinks about the people he's saved, the worlds he's protected, the friendships he's built. "No," he says finally, "I don't regret it, but I wish it had come with an instruction manual." Gwen laughs. "You wouldn't have read it anyway." "Probably not." They sit together watching the stars, and somewhere up there in the vast darkness of space, other heroes are fighting other battles. Other kids are finding watches they don't understand, making choices that will shape galaxies. The universe is bigger than Ben ever imagined, and he's just one small part of it. But that's enough. Being one person, making one good choice at a time, trying to be better today than yesterday, that's enough. The rust bucket sits in the driveway, ready for the next adventure. Max is inside, planning the next road trip because he knows they can't stay still for long. Trouble finds them whether they're looking for it or not. But for tonight, Ben is just a kid sitting on a roof with his cousin, enjoying the quiet. Tomorrow, he'll be a hero again. Tomorrow, he'll transform and fight and save the day. Tonight, he's just Ben, and that's exactly who he's supposed to be. The engine of the rust bucket finally went quiet for the season, but everyone knew the road would call them again soon. Because that's what heroes do. They keep going, keep fighting, keep choosing to be better. And Ben Tennyson, 10-year-old kid with the most powerful weapon in the galaxy strapped to his wrist, was ready for whatever came next. The summer was over. The story was just beginning.